Good afternoon, Java fam. Thank you for tuning in. This is Friday, December 27th. This is our afternoon show. I believe it's the last live show of the year. So I wanted to tell you all, please like and share. We are streaming on, I think, just about every platform known to man. You name it, you can find it, Java with Jimmy. I want to welcome a guest, probably a first-time guest to the Java Cafe. I know you guys are all familiar with being in the cafe, but not familiar with me sitting in this seat and having the guest that I have here with me today. And we're going to talk a little bit about intersectionality. So I'm going to introduce the guest to somebody that I've known, we're just thinking about the time, probably going back to about 2007, and we'll get into the depths of how our relationship was formed. But I want to introduce you none other than James Hills, owner and operator of Java with Jimmy. I can put the applause in the chat.
I was about to put it on the thing, and I said, well, I would have to turn it off. But
welcome to the Java Cafe. How are you today, sir?
Honestly,
wait. Let me hit you with a different how you be hitting people. Tell me how you feel right now in one word.
Nervous.
You be giving people one word. Nervous?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk today about intersectionality. We're intentional about putting James on the couch. This won't be a therapy session, but it will be something where we talk about a lot of issues that intersect basically in our community, some very specific to James. And as I told him previously to us doing this show, and I'm glad we can do this in person. I think usually when we link and we're in the cafe together, it's digital.
This is different.
But for this kind of intersectionality, it was important that we do it in person and really just use James, allowing me to use him kind of as an example of what goes on in his life, but many others' lives, in our family, in our community, in our workplace, and etc. So why don't you take a few minutes and tell people about yourself and what you have planned to tell them today?
So I'm James Jimmy Hills. I'm the host of Java with Jimmy. As you've seen in the advertisement, and if you are familiar with me in the platform, I am a 53-year-old black man who loves God, who is gay and grew up in the hood. And I've recently realized that intersectionality, all of those things can further be broken down into, growing up across the street in Bromley Heath. My mother had succumbed to the crack epidemic. I called myself dropping out of high school in my junior year. And I've always had a heart for like community. And even as a little kid, like I wanted to be like a social worker.
Okay.
Or secretary. I just wanted to be in the helping field. And that translated into going into youth work. I started as a peer educator at 11 in the cave over in Heath Street with my Aunt Maria, who was doing a dance class. And I would always be the one to kind of take the lead with stuff. And so before peer education was even a model, we were doing it. So to speed things up through the youth work, that ended up getting me into some spaces of government. And from government, I wound up coming back to community. I spent some time in medicine. And all of those things, being from community, working in government, spending time in medicine is what really led to, March 24th. And so I'll be very honest.
I had some of your faith work as well.
It's faith. Well, so breaking down that intersectionality even more, I was, I am a ordained elder. My credentials have not been paid since like 2014. But a lot of people that are of the faith are like, once ordained, you're, always ordained. Yeah. A friend of mine says, God didn't change his mind. You did, so that's a big part of who I am, an elder in the Lord's church. I was a youth pastor, still here and there, as you see, direct choirs, music ministry, recording artists, toured and all that. And so all of that, makes up who I am. And it everything about that contributed to, this Java with Jimmy platform. And I'll tell you, I was surprised that when you saw the hoodie on the couch that you didn't say, were you going to wear that? Just because I know you. And the reason why I'm saying this is I wasn't going to wear this. And then I thought about how this platform has made me be my authentic self. And so, I wear it and it's weird to say, but I wear it in honor and of these last like 4.5 years, that this journey of this platform has also, when the camera goes off, it's real.
Yeah.
And I think the last 6, and
and it's custom gear. You should be wearing it. It's good branding. It's custom gear. I mean, I remember being a rep, and I would put the monogram rep on my baseball caps, because it's you want to represent what you do, and I want to kind of put a bookmark on that. You kind of talked about the things that you've done in life, and I know as men, we often define ourselves by our work, and I think that's a kind of a norm. When men meet each other, or actually when anybody meets a man, they always ask, one of the first questions is, what do you do for work?
And I do that. And someone said that comes off not narcissistic, almost like belittling sometimes, but it's really an interest. Just, what do you do?
But sometimes, but I think it's how we're conditioned. I think men in general, kind of, our value by society is determined what we produce. And the reason why, and I think we can get into that deeper. Actually, we can start right there. We think about the intersectionality as men. We're born males, both cisgender males, and so you're conditioned to think that what you produce, what you do, how much money you make, these are things that I think are conditioned to us at a young age, where we get our value from, our sense of value from, our sense of self from. And I'm not saying it's necessarily good or bad, but I think it can have good or bad effects if you put all of your eggs in that basket, or you completely define yourself. We've seen in government and even community service where people put their titles before who they actually are, or and you see it happen in small bursts. Like, you ask somebody their name and they tell you that their title first, right? I'm doctor something, or I'm president something, or counselor something. Like, no, that's not actually who you are. That's just what you do. And there's mixed messages around that. But you talked about your youth service, and I think that's where we met. I think it was around 2007, if I remember, and we're getting older, so our memories aren't probably as crisp as they used to be. But I remember Camp Harborview, which Mayor Menino got started. I remember 2007, we were on the island. They were doing a hip hop. We were part of a hip hop roundtable that Menino had founded, and many of us were at that table, and we were trying to bring programming to young people, but do it around the hip hop culture. And hip hop culture is something that we both grew up in. We're of the age, we're the same age as hip hop, pretty much. So that's been the culture that we've grown up in our entire lives. And I remember that day, still to this day, where we were able to break down lyrics and have workshops with different people. I remember that those of us that were there, a lot of us are still in that community work. I remember DL was there. I remember Erica Esteves was there, and there were a lot of youth workers, and we were young, I think probably in our late 20s, early 30s, when we were doing that work, which is over 2 decades ago now. Time flies. But as much as it intersects in terms of we have similarities, I also think, and I'm going to try to take us a little bit further back as men, what our coming of age, I think every man has a different experience. Even though we have a lot of commonalities, there's different experiences being men. And I think a lot of that is how you're socialized and what was modeled for you. So I wanted to ask you, what were some of the first models of men and manhood that you saw growing up?
So it's interesting you asked that. My first memory of a man I is my grandfather and my sister's father.
Okay.
I say stepfather, but they, my mother and him weren't married, but my sister's father. And there is, even in that definition, is, trauma there, but it's pertinent to this conversation now for the simple fact. And I will get a text just to tell me that something's not. The Lord is good.
Blowing him up already.
No, it was
Cash App.
Huh?
The season
Lift
of
your
giving.
hands and tell God thank
it's
you.
the season of giving. So keep on giving.
Woo! Yes, Lord.
platform.
And so anyway, that actually is a good thing to kind of pull me in. But so I'm gonna go somewhere with this. The two men were my grandfather and my sister's father. And just in the last 6 months, Carlos, I have realized that I have an issue with rejection.
Okay.
And
you stem it back to one of them or to both of them?
To him,
okay.
to my sister's father.
Okay.
I'm good. That's never happened. That's just air and
take your time. Take your time.
Pipe. So I've been on this journey for like the past 4 months, this fourth quarter.
This journey being
journey of
shadow work and a discovery.
Shadow work. And then this is the thing with Carlos is I'm going to say one thing and he's going to
say it out for the people.
Do the clarifying question. And so I've been doing the shadow work, being very reflective. And in one of the things I shared with you before, there's the whole legacy media partnership thing that was a blockage to me. And then under that, I realized that rejection leading back to him, I'm going to come and get you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then that is some thought that leads to, growing up without a father. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to go too far off and you can pull me back, but that in the model of manhood and also being gay, that was a level of a crutch, I think, to some extent for me. And then maybe some societal reason, family reasoning goes around me growing up, reasoning that, he grew up without a father. He's around, women. But on the positive side of those male examples, to get back to your question, my grandfather, and then all along, I think the major men that stand out for me in my life, of course, is first is Bishop A.L. Foxworth, Grace Community Church, the pastor there. And then also John Gibson, who he's a year older than me, but he has expressed interest in me in such a manner that I call him Pops. Okay. And then there was, William Dickerson, who was an influence, late Tony Anderson, when I was going to Greater Love Tabernacle. And then the longest, as far as ministry, is Bishop Bernard Bragg. And I think that that's where you were most familiar with me because when you met me, I was deacon or minister hills and, in suits and all that. And so those men, Bishop Bragg, I often say that, what's my grandmother and grandfather, but my grandfather taught me how to be a man, but it was later. That's what I was going to ask you.
So out of all those men, just give us one or a few things that you pulled from each of them. Like, so was it style of dress, manner of speaking, way we walk? I mean, we usually copy the things we see modeled to some degree.
I think in the evolution of becoming a man, that really happened in the beginning. A lot of this is going to be in real time based on your question. So I'm thinking about or realizing this in real time. That period was when I was at or under Bishop Bragg. And so, everybody, you all know, we go places and people would be like, your son, I mean, you've seen pictures and familiar, we look alike, and so even down to that, integrity, character, you and I think had talked about it once, that the difference between integrity and character is what you do in public. Integrity is what you do in private. Right. Nobody sees. But learn that from him. My grandfather taught me how to be a man, just in the thing of going back to, he was one of them that brought the check home and gave my grandmother the check. Yeah. I believe my mother can attest to that. Familiar with him getting up early in the morning and going to work. Familiar with my grandmother setting the table at night. So when he gets up, he would have his black coffee and his slice of toast. Didn't eat toast or black coffee on Sunday because he was fasting, because he was going to church, a deacon in the Lord's church. Learn that from him. But I'll be honest with you, Carlos. I wound up taking care of him from 2005 until he passed. And it was being around him and I guess maybe all that I observed and coming together or saw growing up came together in those last 3 years of being his caregiver. And so I can say that he taught me how to be a man with others, but I can't tell you no particular thing outside I guess I could. Work ethic, honoring my grandmother. There was never anything of rumor, ever, cheating and all that. Yeah. And he loved my grandmother and was a hardworking man and dedicated, went blind and learned how to make leather wallets, ceramic stuff. So, his stick-to-itiveness, his work ethic, and his faith, definitely his faith was a big part of it.
So two things in your response kind of stand out to me. And I'm as we're doing this in real time, I'm thinking about myself as well. Right. So what I hear and I'm kind of discovering for myself is that as men, we pay attention to how men treat us when we're growing up and how they treat others. right? That's kind of the example that we see. And then the reflection of that, how people treat that man. So if you see a man being treated with respect and you want that respect, you might shape your behavior to look like that man. Now that could be positive, or what we deem as positive, or it could be deemed as negative, depending on, people get respect different ways. It could be feared, and some people like a man that's feared and might copy that behavior of him being domineering and aggressive. So that's why I wanted to kind of just pull that out, because I think we all have shared experiences where we see manhood modeled in many different ways. And a lot of times in our community, we think that it's just about fatherhood. And I grew up with my father, and I've had these conversations with friends and brothers of mine who didn't grow up with a father. Sometimes it's a blessing and a curse. The things, what you learn about a man can be from a non-biological, family member. But sometimes you might not have the greatest father in your life, and could do more damage to you than actually having a good father in your life. So, it splits a lot of ways, but I want the audience to know that regardless, men are shaped by seeing how other men are treated and how they carry themselves in the world. So those, and I think we know that influence from wanting to be men and model good things for young people when we were doing youth work. That you see that carry on a generation. When you see men that do service, men of service and serve others, you continue to do that. I remember my father's memorial. It was packed full of all of his track students and people that he had mentored, and now social workers and school teachers, and they're all in service. So that, to me, that played, and I was like, oh, like you said, when you start to see the mortality and the men that we modeled, you get to see the bigger picture that you might not have seen. And you get to see like, oh, this is where that person's life was going. And I kind of want mine to go in that direction as well. So that's what I was trying to pull out in terms of where we intersect as men growing up in these neighborhoods that we've grown up on. And I'm happy that you're back in this neighborhood. I think it's the nicest part of town. I'm glad you moved back to the best neighborhood in the city.
I've never been, I don't ascribe to the Roxbury, Dorchester, Boston. We're a bus away. And,
I do.
But I got to be honest with you, Carlos. Grew up in Roxbury and Heath Street. Grandmother was Roxbury. That's where I went home to from Beth Israel. But since moving back here, it's just easy to get to everything. And it's just, I got the little yard out there. I looked out. Roxbury is I still don't ascribe, but Roxbury is something's going on because my foot shaking. So obviously, yeah. But one thing to your point is, I'll just say that I don't think, on one hand, I don't think we realize that we're in formation, observation, or observed formation in real time. We don't realize it. Like you said, that I said it was years later with my grandfather. I think on the other hand, I'll be honest, there are times when I don't do things, and you know me, that I don't do things because of being a public figure, because of being a youth pastor. And so while I'm saying that we don't realize it in real time, I think on the other hand, when we start to function in some sort of public or leadership role, we become cognizant of ourselves. I think it's maturity. And when we get older, that what you just said happens, because I was in my 08. I was 30, 47. I was past 30 when I realized the value of men. Got to name a couple other people. Theodore Mathis, I call him Dad, definitely. He's the only one that's still living that has that place in my life that if he called and I don't talk to him every day, whatever, but something goes on real bad, he's getting a phone call. And so those are the men, but that observation is I never thought about it like that.
And I'm curious, just my own thinking. We're just kind of sharing thoughts as we had this conversation. I don't know if that awareness comes automatically to everybody, or whether you actually have to sit and reflect. Sometimes we're so busy, and I feel like I sound like the old guys talking here, and maybe we are. The world gets so busy that you forget to sit down and just stop. Right? Discernment. Some people call it discernment. Some people call it reflection. Some people call it shadow work. And life will sit you down in different ways, whether it's for your health, maybe you've lost your freedom, maybe it's finances, and you're sitting alone by yourself, and it's just you talking to yourself. It's the conversation you have in your head, right? But you hear that voice, and it's you talking to yourself, And those moments, sometimes some of us run away from those moments and we don't get them. Some of us get to sit with them and learn them. So, I want to just name it because I think, depending on your you mentioned maturity, but I don't think it just happens for everybody. You hear women talk about it often, like, them being more emotionally mature. And I think for me, and maybe for other men, we don't get to explore our feelings the same way because we have been conditioned to kind of just bottle them up, right?
Yep.
We're so busy on what we're producing, what we've made, who we are, what title goes with it, and how the world looks at us. We don't have time to figure out how we look at ourselves. I mean, our ego is telling us how to look at ourselves, but beyond the ego, are you happy with yourself when you wake up in the morning? Are you, they talk about women with body dysmorphia, like as if men don't go through it, as if men don't look in the mirror and be like, I wish I had a six pack, or I wish I wasn't so chubby, or I wish I wasn't so skinny.
Right.
Like, so being okay with your own emotions as a man is something where I think we all struggle. And I think that's an intersection where and as men, we don't talk about it enough, and have that fellowship. And, our father figures are from our boomers, right? They're from a generation where they don't even talk about the stuff. Never mind be able to do the work. They just pressed on. And like you mentioned, your grandfather is getting up and getting to it, losing eyesight, but still I got to create something. I got to keep busy because this is what life is like.
I never in him in that thing. I mean, it's obvious, but I never even saw it for him like that. I know it was independence. Okay, there's another thing. And Carlos, I just had a breakthrough. He is where I get this. Finances. I'm going to be transparent. Finances every fourth quarter is an issue for me. And I'm going to get to something that you said. And one of your greatest tests of independence is you can hold your own with everything. You don't need nobody outside of work and stuff, grants. But personally, and I just sat here and realized as I'm talking to you that he is where I get that from. And the reason why I say it like that is because it can be a crutch because we got to be open to help.
Yeah.
To get back to your point, I mentioned to you that it's only been within this quarter. Sometimes finances will put you in that time where you reflective, you don't see as much posting on social media. I'm not, stories with food and all that. I've been chilling. My point is that I'm 53 and
I'm getting there. I'm not too far behind.
He's the host. And so I'm, but if you were to kind of casually just look, who looks older or younger. And I said I wasn't going to get a foot shot, and there go to Crocs.
Yeah, you better put those Crocs in sport mode.
My point, there is that it's only been 24, and I told somebody this in text. 24 almost broke me because I think that sitting right here, we were on the couch, but that conversation with Simone. Yeah. Thank you, Simone.
Shout out Simone.
The reality of those 4 things and then the sub things under those is what pushed me at 53 to get to where you're saying that there's an intentionality around emotional intelligence. And I think you would agree too, even when we're intentional, it's still because you said it was a struggle.
Yeah.
I think it's even more of a struggle when you're intentional because then you're like, oh, you got to unpack this. It becomes an onion. And then it's okay.
Ignorance.
That's why they call it ignorance is bliss. And my thing is awareness is stressful AF because it the more you peel back the onion. So I said, I'm going to keep it real. GBH, some individuals issues didn't pan out the way I thought.
Right.
That led me to realize that I have an issue with rejection. Peel back the onion more. The rejection comes from my sister's father. So when you do that shadow work, it be intentional about getting on the journey, have supports around you and whatnot. Cause it could be, I'm thankful for you and some other folks because you, Thaddeus, and some others have just helped, in different times of talking through this journey about, the piece that everybody waiting for us to get to, like having conversations with you as a straight man that I know is straighter than straight and straight. But in this
I like how you said that 4 times to kind of
because I'm gonna be real with you. There is, my boys and straight allies that have no issue being supportive of me, there is a different level of lookout and protection for them, because anybody that knows you knows it's not an issue. But then trolls and other people, why is Carlos doing that? And all. So anyway,
we'll get into that.
Getting back, to what I was saying, the comfortability to share this intersectionality came just within this year, and I'm 53. And so the intention, even being intentional about the shadow work, it is, I would even say it's more of a struggle, because if you're intentional, once you get through one thing, like I'm wondering now I wonder if the primitive root word, you went to Latin.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what the Madison class of 1990. I wonder, why'd you stay quiet?
I was just.
Oh, okay. I thought that was a little shade with the quiet.
Don't be projecting onto me.
No,
go Cardinals. I ain't mad at you.
Okay, and you remember the Cardinals? All right. What was Tiger? No. What was
Dragons.
I'm going to keep a straight face.
Yeah. O'Brien's Tigers.
Yeah.
Latins the Wolfpack.
Dragons. So okay.
Yeah, Dragons.
All right. Let me get back, because he'll take a swipe real quick.
I'm waiting for you to you tiptoeing to the edge. I told you to put the Crocs in sport mode if you're gonna get spicy with it. But I mean,
no. I wonder what was the point I was going to finish. Okay,
fooling around.
I had said I was going to have a pad and paper. Being comfortable in doing this, in this intersectionality, for me, it just happened this year, man. And it, for brothers that are trying to get on a journey, trying to figure it out. And the last thing I'll say and shut up is that life, and I think sometimes will force you to do a whole lot of shadow work, and however life is lifing for you.
Yeah, if you don't do it yourself. So I think and there's some couple things you brought up that I wanted to, I guess, encourage, because I figured out some of the same things. Is once you start doing the shadow work, me and a couple of brothers of mine, we talk about all the time. It was blissful when you're in your teens and 20s, right? And when you're just living in the world, you're operating off of impulse. You're not thinking about how it's impacting others, how it's impacting you yourself now or even in the future. When you become more self-aware and life starts lifing, it does feel like a struggle. And I think a lot of people lean away from therapy, and therapy comes in all forms. I push people towards actually seeing a licensed therapist. I think, just same way if you broke a leg, you'd go see a doctor. You wouldn't go see a chiropractor. You know what I mean? You go see a doctor that specializes in legs. I always use the metaphor of it's I guess it's a simile if I use the word like. It's like weightlifting or training for a sport. In the beginning, anyone that's done some push-ups, any kind of exercise, when you first start doing it, it's very strenuous. You don't know what pains are going to come. You don't know what soreness is going to come from it. However, the more repetitive you get with it, the more you slightly increase the load, you also realize the gains you're making. It becomes easier. Your recovery time is faster. You're stronger. These are the things, and stronger not necessarily in the independent sense, but like you said, being able to find a good faculty around you to lean on, when you need to ask for help. Like those things get easier as you go in that journey. So I encourage you and anyone else listening, if once you get on that path, yes, it seems stressful, but that the peace increases as well. It's not as blissful as the ignorance, but you find your moments. You figure out what I need to do. I need to exercise to get peace. I need to go for a walk. I need to sit my butt down on this couch on Friday night and not go out, so I don't spend that $100 that I need for next week and blow my finances. You know what I mean? Like you start to discern those things. And even for me, I didn't learn those until I had to sit down for a little while and really, go through it and unwind or unpeel that onion as you mentioned. So
it's real. And I'll leave it, because we could stay there like all day. Just and one thing I'll just name is we haven't got to a topic, and there is just, and your intentionality, I guess, in this segment was just on the fact of being a man, right? Right. That's just this is just some of the things of being men that I think we all share, right? So that's heavy. Let's just say we peeled that part of the onion. That part of the onion was heavy enough right there that if you do the work, that onion can start to bring tears to your eyes, right? Yes, sir.
Now let's add a layer of being Black men. Right. And look, just that side comes from like a lifetime of knowing what it's like to be a Black man. And if you're not a Black man, you can't relate. There's women that love us, especially the Java Cafe is full of them, right? and they're close. There's no one closer to, but it's still a different, completely different lived experience of being a Black man, because we're seen differently by Black women. We're seen differently by white women. We're seen differently by the world sees the Black man differently than anybody else. We're our own unique entity. And there's some commonalities we have, especially in this hemisphere, in this country, that a lot of us go through that we know it's almost in our DNA. I mean, scientists do studies that how much of this trauma is genetic, how much it comes from our forefathers, and then how much, even if you took that out, just our lived experience of almost half a century and a little over half a century, depending which seat you're sitting in, that paints who you are, how the world has treated you because of the color of your skin. So, I don't remember exactly when I became aware that I was Black. I know that the school that I went to was pretty diverse in elementary school. I knew there were kids that looked different. But it probably wasn't until, I grew up in a very politically connected household. So I would hear discussions, but it was kind of like coded language. You start to pick it up in pieces. Like my mother was like, don't you ever go over those bridges right there. There's 5 bridges to get into South Boston. Don't you ever cross one of those bridges without me or your father. And then you kind of curiosity, you read the newspaper, or you hear stuff. I remember like the Charles Stewart case was big. I think I was like 11 at the time, or maybe a little older. And that's when I started to pick up like, oh, he blamed a Black man. Oh, the police went crazy because it's Black men. Or when I'm riding in the backseat of the car and I see it's all Black men with their pants down to their ankle and getting frisked. Like that's when I started to be cognizant of it. I mean, I saw it, you see it in TV and, representation and things like that. But, it's very limited on how the models we have as positive, or I should say, I'm not going to say positive, of Black men. We started with men, but then you get to smaller. I can't relate to every man I see on TV. I might want to be Superman and fly like Superman, but Superman never looks like me.
Nope.
Right? There's no superheroes that look like me. There are no
outside of growing up.
There were no. I mean, bodybuilders maybe. If you saw Tony Atlas, wrestlers, Junkyard Dog, and even that. Look, you start to think about it like, wow, we got to be the Junkyard Dog. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You think of the media pictures you have until you get a Cosby Show, until you get the George Jeffersons. You have a very,
but he was
few.
Yeah.
Right. And you saw them on TV. You didn't necessarily see them in your community. You didn't know who ran the cleaners. You didn't know who ran the corner store.
Interestingly, so I did. Mr. Brown.
Okay. Talk about it.
And the only reason why because when you said it, I'm like, wow, Mr. Brown. Well, okay. Now, in retrospect, the Black man ran it, but he didn't own it. The cleaners, I'm not sure, but I remember one day we had the fire hydrant on and the Black man came up and was like, y'all are messing up my business, and turned the fire hydrant on.
Like my father. That was right there.
So it was the corner on Mount Pleasant and Dudley.
Okay.
And I believe it was because there was nothing you ever saw. I think they were Black owned. And so all that to say that you're right about the experience of our observation in our brothers. And I like how you remove the word positive, because it takes away that implication that we know that there is quote unquote good and bad, but let's just say Black men, because the majority are quote unquote, we're not going to say positive, stand up, great contributors, builders of their families and themselves, families and communities. Right. You know what I'm saying? So to your point also about how media portrays us and all that. So growing up, I'll shut up after this. Growing up in church, I think is what was a little bit of at least that character to some extent around, at least seen from afar, Black men.
Yep. And so, I think some of us have different examples, which is dope. And I think that, when we talk about in a more historical sense, you watch the news and realize that people that look like you are being targeted because of, and I'm saying this to kind of more illustrate it to those that are not Black men that might be watching, right? In the streets, once you walk outside, we were latchkey kids. You grew up in the 80s, you probably had a key around your neck on a shoestring. You could come and go in the house, as long as you were in by the lights, when the lights came on. But when you become of age and they start to see you as a man, you are already conditioned to know that white men can be a mortal threat to you. right? Now, you learn that at like 14, 15, you hear about the Emmett Tills, your history of slavery, not as deep as you want to, but you know that historically in this country, white men kill and do terrible things to black men, right? So you have that already on you. Then you come of age in a city like Boston or probably any other major city in America, and you also realize that the boys that look like you some of them are also growing to become a mortal threat to you. That wearing the wrong hat in the wrong neighborhood
could quickly
turn into you
stepping on
losing your
sneakers
life.
or
So now as a young black man, we're talking 17, 18, 19, you still coming of age, full of testosterone, frontal lobe is not developed, you're all impulse. Now you're navigating a world where the two major male groups can cause you physical harm.
Yeah.
And so you become hardened to that. And there's not many places in the world where you now get to lower your defenses, to become soft, to explore anything other than anger and defensiveness, right? Yep. Shout out to those that love us, especially the black women that love us, because that becomes the only safe haven for you to be kind of your full self. If you can even get back to that, if you haven't become so hardened already that you can open up to those feelings. And black women are conditioned to see us a certain way as well. Yep. I mean, they might not want to admit that, but we're all shaped by our beliefs. Like the same way they have black men modeled to them, they have an expectation that they put on us to either be protectors, to be danger. All these now weigh on us as well. And so, I wanted to hit that part about that second level of heaviness. I can't really describe it any different than that, of being a man and then being a black man.
It is, I'm thinking back to correlate your piece about when you realize an emotional intelligence and whatnot, and to your point about when you realize that you were black. My first memory, I would say, is in a supermarket with my grandmother, and it was one of those 12 lines. My grandmother had 14 items, and this white woman in front of me went in. Grandmother moved the cart back and was like, "You don't think he can count?" Without saying it, I knew. And that's, I think, my earliest example. And my most recent is November 5th. I mean, and everything in between that. And everything, in between that. Yeah. So that
from
is
micro to macro.
The micro to macro. And then a different micro level, I grew up I've been through like what I call 4 cycles of violence as a black man. Growing up amongst it, losing friends. 1 August, I remember being at Johnson every weekend. Just crazy. And then, as a youth worker,
right,
cycle in that.
Right.
Then as a program manager, merging into a little bit, because I used to be afraid of the space. Thanks to you, as I'm doing better. A little bit of the policy area. And now it's policy, it's public and policy. And so I've got to see this, in different manners. And even still today, I mean, not as much, because there's something in me that, like, I walk through the groups of the dudes and purposely like go through the middle. How y'all doing, gentlemen? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I don't feel it as much, but I felt it in general as a young black man. Yeah. Everything that you said.
Yeah. Then
there's the other onion piece that, comes with my experience as a man. And wow. So I understand my 4 intersections, but breaking down the subsets, it's just a man in general and then a black man. And I don't think about as much of the man in general as I think about the black man. And I don't think that's good, bad, or ugly. It's just that my life experience that's what right. And I think also with where you are in life, it's a different,
well, hold on before you, because I like that line.
Yes, sir.
So it's almost as if we don't even have the luxury of seeing ourselves as just men, because we are always black men. And it's not like something, and we'll flesh this out a little later, but it's not like something we can turn on and turn off or hide. The world sees it. As soon as we walk out the door, the world sees what we look like. So the only time we're really just looking at each other as men, if we can, is when you're just around your own tribe, when you're around other black men, right? And it kind of evens the playing field. But even then, we could get into colorism. We could get in, and we'll get into
classism and yep.
Right. And how that plays out. And we probably have different experiences there. I'm sure growing up in the 80s as a lighter skinned black man, I actually talked to a couple of friends of ours, one that I went to high school with, another that teaches yoga, and they talk, and these are some of the back in the day toughest football players. Like I seen them knock helmets flying, and these are guys you didn't want to cross, you didn't want to be on their bad side. And now I talk to them as older men, they're like, all that masculinity and that toughness came from being picked on because I was light skinned and I had long wavy hair, and because the world treated them different, they adjusted how they showed up in the world because they were tired of being picked on, tired of being underestimated, tired of being looked at because of what everybody else was projecting onto them. So even when we're black men amongst black men, there's still some inequalities in there that we put on each other.
Yeah,
that's important, right? So
somewhat conditioned to, but we perpetuated.
Yep, absolutely. That we carry, and when we get to a certain level of emotional maturity that I wish upon everybody, we have at least the choice to continue on that conditioning path or to let it go. And it might take some work to let it go. And I'll get into a little bit because we're still unlearning things that we've learned and been conditioned to do our whole lives. But I wanted to speak to that point because as we get into the community kind of set of it, that's where we grew up. We grew up around a lot of black men. You spend time fellowship with a lot of black men, whether it's in church, whether it's and you mentioned policy, and I don't want people to miss that. Sometimes people tune out with policy, but policy is what puts us in the ghetto.
Yeah.
Policy is redlining that puts us all in tenement buildings side by side. It keeps us, fighting for resources. It's what makes me look at my brother as a threat because I feel like there's a scarcity. There's only 2 pieces of the pie left. I got to get one for me and I got to bring home one for my family. I can't really allow you to get your piece of the pie because I'm feeling so scared that I might not get mine. Right.
And that's very present
and
today.
Right. And it's nonstop, and it's policy, and it's from people's belief system that create policy. Either we are not tuned in because we feel like we can't shape it, or others are shaping it and not in our best interest. Like when you talked about, who runs the shop versus who's owning the shop, we can still travel up the length of Blue Hill Avenue. And if you look at who owns the building rather than who lives there, you might see different ethnic names on the titles and deeds of the people that are on the mailboxes.
Don't look Johnson, Smith, and Jackson.
Right.
You know what we saying.
Unless they're from England, Johnson, Smith, and Jackson.
Yeah.
So that community piece is big. And then now what I think is when you mentioned like the 4 different levels of violence. So I relate to all of those, right? We have different relation points there. And so I'll segue back to meeting you in 07. So people know we met in like 07. And I remember the first time, and he knows what I'm about to say.
I don't know. There's a couple of
this is the first time I really wanted to punch James in the face. And it was kind of over policy and personality. And it was 09. I was running for city council my second time. At this time, we called him City Hall Hills because he was working for.
You did start that. City Hall Hills.
He was working for Mayor Menino, and he was feeling himself. And Mayor Menino was having a young professional. My second time running for office, and there was a professional networking event at Merengue Restaurant, which is my hood. Like this,
I need my sneaker.
This is like 2 blocks away from where I stayed. And I had my pin on. I went up to just drop some flyers because I'm trying to link with the young Black professionals and Latino professionals in the city. I felt like I was representative of them in politics. And James tried to stop me at the door. He was carrying that Menino flag and was like, "Oh, you can't pass out the flyers in here." And I get it. You don't want to cross politics. So I was like, "All right, I'm not going to pass out flyers." And then he was like, "Oh, and you got to take your pin off." And I was like, "Yo, who does this joker think?"
I said I had.
And so I looked at the room and I looked at everybody in the room, and I think in my head I was already cursing you out, and I wasn't the emotional, mature man that sits before you now. So I also knew that you were parked outside, and I was like, "Well, I don't need to stay. I'll get to these people a different way." And I walked out. I had one of my peoples with me, and I walked past.
You gonna say who it is?
No, I'm gonna leave him out of it.
They ain't in the space no. So go ahead.
He's still in good spaces.
They're still in
they're still in good circles. They're still in good circles. So
the
the younger me or that past me thought about putting you on flats that night. But I also knew that you might tell on me. So I was like, well, I can't put him on flats. He might tell. So a friend of mine put a different campaign flyer on his car.
Whose campaign flyer was it?
I think we were working. I had been previously working for Michael Flaherty, but now I was independent. A friend of mine was working for Michael Flaherty, and this was 09 when Flaherty was running against Menino for
Him
mayor.
and Sam Yoon.
So they put a big Flaherty sign on James' car. James comes out with the mayor, and the mayor sees it. Now the mayor's mad. James tells the mayor that I'm involved in it. So now the mayor's not speaking to me. Luckily, the mayor's driver is a high school friend of mine I went to school with. Shout out Officer McNulty.
John.
Yep. So he knew that it wasn't me. He saw who did it and was watching. But I don't think I spoke to James for like another 2 months. Like I really wanted to. I was like, who does this dude think he is? But that's we were in titles. We were thinking about who we are. Egos were
first campaign thing, and then look after all of that.
Right.
Who schooled me?
So we've gone back and forth. It's gone. And it's the reason why I brought that up is because a lot of things can divide us in community.
Yes.
And this community work, and I'm trying to be more cognizant about the things that we should let divide us and the things we should not let divide us. Or at least as it pertains to me. So as we reach kind of this fourth pillar and this in the intersectionality of James, you mentioned being a gay man.
Yes, sir.
Right. So
yep.
I want to bring this up. Even when he was creating the flyer for this, he mentioned he tried to and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you tried to downplay the part about sexuality because you didn't necessarily want me to, I guess, catch any flack.
Yeah, I said that, like and that is always, going to be a issue for me with brothers that are allies because I know ninjas. And there'd be no other, I'll use the terminology, anything sus or zesty or whatever, but just because, you decided and you're man enough and secure enough to explore this conversation for the purpose, and we haven't even gotten to mental health and health, of what brothers go through in DL. But yeah, I mean, I had to put those 4 intersections, but it was, like, I think you said it was up the top and small.
Yep. And it was telling to me, as I've done my shadow work over the years, and I'm going to be transparent with people. I don't want people to think that I've been emotionally mature my whole life. Like I still have a group of friends and we'll get caught up and play the pause game.
Yep. I still say pause often.
So I don't want people to think like we're preaching from on high or have it all worked out. Right now, I'm still aware that in the space where we do it, we're kind of needling one of our most homophobic friends. And it kind of pushes him out of his comfort zone to confront some things that he might not have confronted yet. So we're kind of intentional of it, but we're still also being kind of juvenile when we do it. And we, it's in a safe space.
Oh, wait a minute. You're talking in an example with I had somebody else in mind, but go ahead.
Oh yeah. It's not someone, so, I understand where it comes from. Right. And when I say that kind of exclusion, but it doesn't I don't feel like it does any service to myself or other straight men or members of the community that don't understand that extra layer, right? So what was telling to me about your comment when you said that was, from your experience that you felt like me being associated with a gay man, being friends with, colleagues with, working with, interviewing, could put me in harm's way, whether it's ridicule, whether it's someone questioning my sexuality, whether it's harm, whatever the case may be. And I knew when you said that, it was telling to me, because I'm going to use the parallel and go take that for people that can't relate and go, oh, I don't get it yet. Men, when they're having daughters, everybody will go, oh, you got a daughter, you must have been doing something wrong to women. Because that's how karma's paid you back.
Yep.
And men fear having daughters because men know how men treat women, right? Our white allies, while can be allies sometimes they are silent, right? From Martin Luther King speeches all the way up to our progressive movement now, sometimes they stand in silence and we go, oh, now y'all are silent? And I get it, but we might not like it, but they know what kind of violence and harm can come about going against those that do harm to them.
And that's fair.
You know what I mean?
And
I'm not even getting into the right or wrong, but just the understanding, like, like the same way we grew up knowing that they hang, burn, lynch, break, arrest, incarcerate. They know it too. They were standing right there when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they know what happens when they're outcast from their comfort zone.
Yep.
They know it can happen to them as well. They can get disowned from their family. They can get pushed out of their part of society, their community. So I get it. But I want people to be aware, like in our community, what damage we're doing to each other. When we as men exclude women from science, from bank accounts, from equity, we are cutting out half of the brains and intelligence on the planet. And men know that. Men know what they're doing. It's intentional. 9 times out of 10, it's intentional. And so women that know what that feels like, these are all kind of equivalent feelings. I'm not saying they all bear the same weight, but they feel similar to a person on the inside.
It goes back to I'll say this, the rejection piece. For whatever reason, how it displays itself, I would say that the commonality there for all of us and them is rejection, or not being accepted. Maybe rejection is the wrong word.
So with that being said, I'm going to take us all the way back to 4 things we named: being men, being Black, being in community, and then adding the level of sexuality on it. So where I can relate to 3 out of 4 of those. It's a totally different struggle. One being a man, because men have beliefs about, straight men have beliefs about gay men, informed and uninformed, mostly misinformed and ignorant. Black men have a specific set of beliefs about gay men.
In general,
both informed and uninformed, and mostly ignorant or misinformed. And that gets exacerbated in community. Right. So so I would like you to speak to just some of, as much as you're comfortable with, the different struggles in that area. How is it finding fellowship and community? Because if you're concerned about me because of a flyer design, that must be, and I'm projecting, so you can say yes or no. I think you would carry that into how you make friends, how from at a young age in community all the way up to, when you set up a business meeting still, do you go into a meeting going, I wonder how this guy looks at me. I wonder if he thinks this, or I wonder, if he, how do you carry that? Right.
So there's a few things there. I'm just going to say it, one of the most recent trending current event things that really made me look at the sub experience of being a Black man raised in the hood was the Slades thing. Not getting into the semantics of it, but the response and the reaction made me do some shadow work, I think, on a macro level about us as Black men, how we handle and talk about, acknowledge, make safe spaces for people that are, now here's all these subcategories, that are out openly gay. There's subsets when they're when in there, but we ain't gonna go too deep. Maybe me, you, and Simone can do episode 3. Then there's
let's get a little bit. So even when because I want to break down some of these terms, we have these umbrellas, and everybody has a different definition. So out openly gay still shows up a million different ways.
It does.
So I don't want people to think that out openly gay means you got a rainbow pin.
I was going to,
and and a tie-dye shirt, and whatever stereotypes you want to attach it to. Like out openly gay doesn't necessarily, you can't put a picture to it. There's no poster child for out openly gay.
It's and thank you, because that is a slight, I won't say, but for lack of better words, I love him and know him. It's a slight check. And the reason why I say that is so everything I'm going to say forward here and everything I've said is my intersections and from my life experience. So I want to say that context. So I'm not generalizing. As a Black man, when I say that, I'll be honest, how I am conditioned and grew up until past, I don't know, 6-7 years, maybe, that out openly gay for me not understanding the subsets was the flag, the femme, the makeup, the nails, the all of that. I think since evolving and understanding individuality and all this other stuff. So there are, let me rephrase it a few ways. There are people that are living their authentic selves. And if that displays some presumption about their sexuality, they don't care. And they're just fine. And it is what it is. The petty of me wants to go, we're back in the day. I'm here. We're, and then, Right. So I'm going to say it. I'm here. We're queer. And
flying the flag everywhere you go.
Everywhere.
Right.
Then there is, and I'm going to say, I'll say for me, there is the evolution of I'm out. And I say this, but I'm not a flag carrier. That is just not me now in these go ahead.
Would you, because we're using cliches like flag carrier and stuff like that, but would you, so I get I think I get the importance of declaring your space, right? Yes. Anybody saying, I'm here, recognize me for who I am, especially when you're part of a marginalized group. I'm not comparing or doing the oppression Olympics, but we had to say I'm black and I'm proud to get to carve out our space, right? So there's different levels of how you show up. Now that not everybody is going to show up that way, but there's a time to do that. So I understand that point of it, but what you're getting to is that's not how you felt comfortable showing up.
It goes to three of the intersectionalities. Through molestation, through a part of that, and I'll just go ahead and say it that I shared previously. Through older men taking advantage of me and me walking home and stuff and whatnot. I saw a comment on your post or whatever. Through all of that, I had to deal with evolving into a man with where that was happening was either walking from grandma's to Bromley or Bromley to grandma's, which was by OP. And so my orientation through all that stuff I went through, molestation and being taken advantage of and all that other stuff. This might get, I do a bleeping. I'm a ninja first. And I want people to understand, because you said there may be some people tuning in that, lighter than me, white folks or whatever. What I mean by that is I am a black man, and everything that we talked about today is paramount for me before anything else. The molestation, the sexuality.
That's why we did it in that order, so we could see, how
and the other thing I appreciate about that is this isn't all of who I am.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so I have to own that I am conditioned by the orientation of over there in how I embrace my sexuality. And it's not a fear thing. Am I the most masculine thing in the world? Nah. Am I a thug? No. But that's just, I am not flamboyant. I may be conceited. I may read and dress loud, but that is just not me. And I don't have a problem with someone who is generally.
But let's be clear, because these words like flamboyant, we often
conditioning. We
often attribute those to gay men.
Yep.
I know several straight men who I consider flamboyant.
Yeah.
And when I say flamboyant, loud colors.
Yep. And what's the first thing that comes to mind? No, society from society standpoint speaking.
Flamboyant it's usually a feminine. Yeah. It's usually a feminine undertone. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking like, and maybe this is still true with even looking at straight men, how much time they take in getting their outfit together, how well color coordinated they are, their grooming,
metrosexual.
So flamboyant, I don't want people to think that flamboyant is only for gay men.
Sir.
Like you can be flamboyant in anywhere on the sexuality spectrum, right? Sir. So
you're right.
That's just more of a personality thing. But I wanted to call that out because I think we do attribute certain beliefs onto how we think gay men should or should not show up, or it bothers certain straight men or straight people how they show up or don't. And it actually bothers some gay people how other gay people may or may not show up. Right? Some of them want everybody to fly the flag,
or
and have the pin on at all times. And so my original point for, and I still want you to speak to some of the struggles, the specific struggles, but my reason for really wanting to do this interview is because sometimes we exclude people that we don't need to exclude, right? And I say that because prejudice is natural. I think prejudice is natural to a certain extent. You see it in nature. Certain prey animals have bright colors to warn you that they're dangerous or poisonous, right? This, you see a snake,
you know to stay away from that.
You know to stay away from that.
And then they know who to go after.
Yeah, right. Usually these things are designed in you to protect you from harm. And I'm fine with a prejudice that keeps you from harm to people that may not be Black, may not have ever been oppressed. When we say stuff like, just a metaphor, like, can I trust all white people? I have white friends, but if the shit goes down, do I have time to sort out your sordid history of the Europeans in the Western Hemisphere and look for the 10% that are good, or do I got to worry about the 90% who are over here?
And put that energy there.
So that's when the prejudice gets worrisome to me, when we do it to members of our community because of their sexuality, because your sexuality is not a threat to me.
On so many levels, Carlos. I mean, so I pointed to Slades, and I think, and I'm going to say also too, if this was 3 or 4 years ago, people may have not been. We do what we do in our community. We crack jokes. You talk about, amongst friends and whatnot. I still crack jokes and play the pause game, and me and you have joked. What I saw on social media in response to, there is validity to the whole sanitation thing. Don't put your ass and all that. And I'm not getting into the semantics. That I'm not taking away from some.
No, I get you.
It was on the. So
what's appropriate for
what is well known as an eating establishment?
Right. That venue. That time of the evening.
And I'm just going to name also too that. Shout out to them for just creating a space, to the Boston Black Pride folks. My point is that I looked at some of the comments, and people were getting ready to boycott the business, not on the sanitation, not on the fact that there was body parts exposed and all of that. It's because it was 2 men.
Right.
Some.
Right.
But what was paramount.
Some people will hide and say, oh, no, if it was 2 women, I felt the same way. If it was a man and woman, but
let's give
most
credit,
of them are lying. But okay.
And let's give credit to the fact that this year of the video leak, but there was an act between women previously, and there wasn't this pushback like that.
Right.
Maybe a video didn't get out. That's fair. My point is that I'm kind of okay. And what I mean by that is I've been on this journey, come out, have friends like you, talk to people, and I work through my stuff. I didn't come out till I was 40. So for 13 years. My concern is the 17, 18, 30-year-old that's in the bedroom, and what is going on social media is happening in Lenox Street. It's happening on Mora Street. It's happening in Heath Street. And we'll get into this definition thing again.
And all the ethnicities in the city. It's happening on Hancock Street and Cape Verdean neighborhoods and Latino neighborhoods and Center Street.
Asian, everywhere, with every socioeconomic category, that 17, not just male, female, however they define themselves to themselves right now, that can't define themselves any other way. So what are they going through mentally when they hear? And then now I'm bringing it back to.
That's why I wanted to know about your struggles. Starting from, when do you struggle to make friends in childhood or teenage?
We can go back to that in a second, because I think naming this and then going some history and context. I'm thinking about that person that is hearing, and I'm talking right now specifically about us, Black folks, the response in Slades. And I named them streets and whatnot because I'm talking about, our hood, and giving an example that they're listening to people joke. They're looking on social media, and they're on the low.
Right.
And what I mean by on the low is that even has various levels.
Yeah.
On the low could be as minimal as they have a desire to explore. They have a desire to explore, they did, and they may look at porn. They have a desire to explore, they did, and they only have and will ever mess around with one person of the same gender. That's just a few subcategories there. Generally speaking, folks generally presumption, know what I mean by DL on the down low. They're not actively public about their interest, curiosity, and desire for same gender.
Okay, so let me just hold you right there.
Yes, sir.
Because I think the why is important.
Oh.
Right?
Yep.
When we talk about out and we talk about DL, it goes back to how straight people and same gender loving people expect people to show
that
their sexuality in public.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm curious I know out has been a term for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was reflecting on it, I'm talking to family, I'm talking to friends, and I'm going, why is it even an issue? Because why do I need you to be out? Why did I put you in a closet for you to come out of? What, like you said, what is the family saying when we're making those jokes? And it's one thing if you're really, even if you're in your living room, right? Because I don't want to excuse us making jokes among ourselves, like, okay, they're safe. Obviously, people are going to do what they do. But even when you're in your living room, you don't know what the kid behind the door that's walking through can hear you giggle at or laugh at, right? You don't know what comments they read online. So that closet, which is such a terrible term to me, is what is keeping your loved one, your son, your nephew, your cousin, your brother, your uncle from being able to be their authentic self. Is not them, it's you, it's us.
It is, Carlos. Thank you. It is us because it is us and them. I'll use myself for an example. Well, okay, we're gonna have a breakthrough here in real time. I'll say it was me, but it was me because I knew what us was going to do growing up. I've never really denied it. I've like beat around the bush and all that. But it is us. You asked a question. Why? In the closet, and you didn't say behind closed doors, but what business is it, what people doing behind closed doors? There's a couple of things. There's a little petty answer I'm thinking of. Around, why must I know and why must you be out? It brings up the thoughts, you got to know the ops and you got to, or the most pettiest thing that comes to mind is, are you threatened? Like, is this, do you need to know?
That's what I'm saying. So, what threat is it to me for me to have?
As a straight man, none. But then.
So who's it a threat to?
It's
I know I got you playing advocate, but go ahead.
By my experience and observation and some of the people I saw posting on social media, it's a deflection. It's a, for them, it's a danger to them because maybe if I know that you're out and people know that you're gay, I won't be around you. So they won't think that I am.
So it goes back to, because I know how I treat, or my community treats this group, and I don't want to be treated that way.
I can't.
I have to denounce and stand away
whether
from
I
it.
am or not. And so it goes to your point about the us, that society just, and I don't know, Carlos, outside, and we didn't get this much into this, the only people to some extent get a little grace from me is the faith community, based on how for centuries and what is believed, how heterosexuality is the traditional biblical model. For me personally, as James, they get a little bit of pass. I forgot what my point was.
But it's not a threat to.
It's
not like heterosexuality is dying out.
It's not like it's on one hand, in 2024, so many people, a lot more people.
8 billion people on Earth. There's more people on Earth now than ever been in the
and which
history at
means
one
that
time.
every other category, every subset marginalized group is even bigger now. You know,
So that means that so children aren't being produced out of same sex, same gender loving couples. So obviously, it's no threat to a heterosexual or heteronormative lifestyle.
Yeah, it really is
There's
not.
no agenda
You know
there.
what has made it a threat, Carlos? The resistance and the pushback. Slades for me, and I don't agree with this. I don't do it. I don't agree with it. I've said publicly before, there are names in the city with dudes I'll go to my grave with. That outing and the sometimes how I interpret an aggression of you're going to accept all of who I am no matter what it is. This whole thing with Slades, it gave me a lens into, for some, why they display that energy. It's like y'all really want to be like that just because, you know, and I don't agree with it, but I felt, to my point, I felt for the mental health of the down low population. I'm out. I felt for me because I put up a post. I don't know if you've seen it. Based on some of the comments, I saw some folks writing one set. I'm like, really? And then the other set, I'm like, so, well, for both of them, this how you feel about me? You're making a generalization.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then you're making that
list.
same generalization about some of your family members.
Right.
And one thing that stood out to me, Carlos,
was friends and
coworkers, people. And the thing is, there's people around y'all that y'all don't know that love the same gender.
Right.
And they just, and I got to say to my community, the gay part of it, you talked about this before about, you know, what is out, what is flamboyant. So one of the things that I get, I don't consider, you talk about the struggle. I don't consider myself fully accepted generally in any community. As a man, as a black man, as a gay man, from the hood.
This is the part I want.
And definitely in the church. I don't, Simone, I sat here that day,
right, and
I can say it now without tears because I've been working through it. Simone was, when was that? Simone is probably when this shadow work started.
And that's because of how those subsets or those communities have treated you.
Yeah.
And how they've not necessarily treated you, but also what you've heard them say about people that live a similar lifestyle.
And even within, so I named 4 or 5 groups.
Yeah.
Okay, let me do this right. In one group, I'll hear what the other 4 say about them. You know what I'm saying? And then you switch in the other 4. So in that convo with Simone, you know, and I'm, you know, it is what it is. I'm cool with it. And people reach out, James, I love you. I get that as individuals, but I own the fact that generally speaking, as a man, I'm not fully embraced because I'm gay. As a black man, I'm not fully embraced because I'm gay. Minimal 0.3%. Sometimes I go through the light skin thing, just messing. In the faith community, I'm not embraced because I'm gay. In the gay community, I'll end with that one. What was the other one? In the hood, I'm not embraced because I'm gay. In the faith community, is that the one I said I was? No. The one I'm ending with is the gay community. Yeah. I'm not embraced because I made the statement a few minutes ago. I'm out, but I don't carry a flag. And I want to define that. I'm surprised you didn't get me yet for that. Again, when we got on the subject of my conditioning and being a black man and from the hood, I honestly, Carlos, don't think for me, and this is breakthrough in real time, what you said about what we do is sometimes the reason where some people don't want to wear their flag.
Right.
I can unequivocally say for me,
and age probably matters too. I mean,
age is a big part of it because, you know,
out at 53 is in Roxbury is different than out at 33 now in Roxbury.
Huge there.
Right.
Write that down because I want to go back to that about some trauma I experienced recently for even in still 2024. What was the point I was making before you said that?
Carrying the flag.
So for me, it's not that I don't, because a flag is a symbol. I mean, I'm out. It's just not who I am to overexert my desire for the same gender.
Right.
I actually, and I'm thinking about this in real time, Carlos, like, okay, we talked earlier. You didn't say this on camera, but what did you tell me about you knowing before I came out?
Right. Like you get a sense. And you, like I said, once you decide, like, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't, like, there are straight people who are very private about, you don't know who anyone that they've ever slept with in their life, and it doesn't matter.
Your thing about why.
That's what I mean.
So the thing is, my point and breakthrough for me right now is a part of me. My point is, people always knew, but you never saw pictures.
Right.
You never saw a post.
Right.
And
I also never asked, and I wasn't waiting for you to come out, or thinking, oh, he needs to just hurry up and come out. I don't think
you and I ever actually, Carlos, I need to tell you something.
Right.
It's just in the evolution, we just talk like we talk.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a threat to me. It doesn't it doesn't change my values about myself. It's not going to change how I treat you. I might not invite you to a stripper party if there's going to be women there, because it might not be your party.
Depends on what food's going to be there.
Yeah, but you still might be like, nah, I still like to go. You know what I'm saying? So,
and let's keep it real. I remember being in I was getting a loan one day, and the loan officer was sitting in front of me, and she was low cut. I'm saying this respectfully, but I think you get the point of what I'm saying. I'm still, at the end of the day, I'm still a man. She was signing the paper, and Carlos, I had to go like this because I was like, sometimes what men do when, y'all are showing your blessing is being revealed. I'm going back to my point that I don't understand why it's such an issue. My point before that, before I end with this, is that I feel that a part of me was publicly outed just because I was in a relationship. And they said, can I post? And I let them post. That was the ninja. I knew it. It's focused on, so did you see James? And so in real time, I'm thinking about if that never happened. And some within my community, I think, being good-hearted, but it was sometimes presented to me like wrong. So I prefer, there's a term, masculine for masculine. And you said something earlier that I love. You said Western Hemisphere. I say the Western American hood black definition of and the other thing I'm throwing in there now, did I say stereotypical yet? Stereotypical, perception of masculine for masculine. And to my point, ending, and I'll shut up, not fully embracing the gay community because of that is what I prefer and like. That's to be clear,
masculine for masculine means
meaning that I like a regular,
less feminine, less feminine traits,
less feminine presenting, less what typically is associated with.
So let's get all the way.
Woman.
So a man wearing his hair in finger waves is going to have a more feminine look than a guy with a Caesar, a low Caesar, or low Caesar. Wings. You know what I mean? Or wearing a halter top in jeans is different than a guy wearing a hoodie. Right. A gay man wearing a hoodie in Tim's. They're presenting different. They might have the same sexuality, might find the same men attractive.
They just present how they present and a different sense of the fashion.
Right.
I seen some meme. I don't know if you've seen it the other day where there's this couple. It's a brother and a white woman. He is, and again, these terms where I'm using very loosely. I'm not speaking for my brother because he gets me every time I've used one wrong or need to define it. He's very feminine presenting, lashes, what is traditionally defined as women mannerisms. And then she is about 6'5". Ooh, has a strong muscular build.
That sound effect's gonna get you in trouble.
Sorry. But see, it's even
I get it. I get it.
And so, and she's like picking him up, but she's straight and he's straight. And so interesting presenting, but presenting it's like, and so my point is I don't get as embraced in the gay community because I'm not in the clubs. I'm not just the only way I can define it, Carlos, is just out there and over. I am not over publicly expressive with my feminine side. That's just, the only way the feminine side comes out is, when it comes to what's up under this hat. Like, whoa, let me back up, because you would get ready to get me.
No, I wasn't.
Why does that have to be feminine? Because I want my hair to look good.
I think we should. Well, a couple of things. I think we need to get into the mental health part of it.
Yes.
And the physical health of it. I messed around Java fam and let one of these laptops die. And I don't know if that's going to be problematic or not, but I know this is probably a good time for us to take a quick break.
Okay.
I'm not sure what our time check is, because I've been slacking as host. I'm so engrossed in the conversation. I haven't done a time check either. So I want to just pause for a minute. No pun intended. Check the time, check some comments.
Your other co-host is on here.
Good.
You know what I'm talking about? Not Simone.
Oh.
Remember when I got knocked off the computer?
Oh, when it froze.
Ramilda.
Shout out to Ro.
So we're going to have to, in real time, plug this up.
Yep.
We're going to take a quick break because we need to take a break, and then we're going to come back and get.
We'll come back and we'll talk about what I think. I've been asking the why. Why we exclude? Why do we treat different? Why do we do these things to members of our own community? And I think for me, my understanding is it ties into belief systems. It does tie into what we think about femininity. It does tie into how we treat femininity in our community, whether from conditioning or beliefs or wherever that comes from. But I want us to come back and dive into that a little bit and read what people's comments are, because I think people will project some of those feelings, and we can address some of them and speak to some of them as we wrap up. I'm not sure where we are in time.
We're Jesus. What time are we? Oh no, we're good. Hour and 20 minutes. That wasn't bad. I thought we started at 12. We're going to take a break. And we'll be back with y'all in a couple of seconds. So hold on.
You hear that old man noise as he got up? I said it.
I'm not in camera. Y'all can't see the look.
Yeah.
For the innovators, the dreamers, the risk takers, independent workers who keep our neighborhoods thriving, Connector Care from the Massachusetts Health Connector has plans for every lifestyle and budget.
Having access to affordable healthcare is for everyone in our community.
Connector Care plans help more people save on healthcare that covers all their needs. Find out if you qualify for Connector Care. Visit mahealthconnector.org or call 1-877-MA-ENROLL.
I'm a very sensitive person, and I feel the pain of my people. They know me, they call on me, and I assure them that I'm not a provider, but I am one who cares. I always say to them, well, it's better to know than not to know, because if you know, you can do something about it. Think about the loved ones around you. Think about the ones that love seeing you come through that door. Take the step and get tested. That's it.
Save lives. This is a farm, and this is growth. This is a brick, and this is a foundation. This is energy. This is fuel. This is a spark. And this is our Earthshot, a reboot of belief in our ability to live sustainably, an engine for enthusiasm about what's possible, and a year of generating more of the one resource we can't live without: hope.
What's up, everybody? We're going to do another quick one, and we'll be back with you.
I'm not as nice with the board. Y'all know what James went through to put this show together behind the boards. My gosh.
Microphone check 1 2. Here we go. Java with Jimmy live at the City Winery. Microphone check 1 2. How you doing? I am well. Are you? We just here to have a good time. We're here to have a good time with everybody, hanging out at City Winery. Coming to perform, and they're taking pictures of us. Some will do like this real quick.
All right, we're back. Thank you for tuning in. So, I was thinking about doing podcasting and something like this a couple of years ago. But when I see all this equipment and the stuff you do as a one-man show, I'm in awe of it and still learning it. So shout out to James for keeping this platform running for the 4 years it's been going. I don't know how you do this day in and day out. My nerves would be shot. So I'm glad you're taking a week off, after this being the last live show of the year. Again, please like and share. Hopefully this conversation is not only illuminating to you, but maybe someone in your family or your constituency or someone that follows you on social media. If you share it, they might be able to sit with this by themselves or have or it might spur a conversation between you and your loved ones that hopes to, I guess, bring more equity in terms of how we treat each other in our community. Before we went to break, we were talking about kind of the mentality. You're gonna see me pass James this laptop so that he can look at comments. But I guess we were talking about belief systems, and when I really started to get into belief systems, and even as we've had this conversation, you talk about the faith community. Obviously, is a community that has strong belief systems, and I know the Java Cafe is full of the faithful, so I'm not going to challenge. I'm not going to challenge any of those belief systems today, even though I might not share all of them. And I've read all three of the major good books. But I get it, how that can condition you to have your belief systems. Now, what I will say to people that have strong belief systems, wherever they come from, is I would encourage people to kind of explore where your beliefs come from. A lot of us cook the same food. What we believe about food to be good food or soul food is kind of tradition. It's not really because we've researched whether that food was healthy. In that commercial break, I was just reading about colon cancer. My father actually passed from colon cancer. And it's reason why we spend a lot more detail, or I spend a lot more time now and my significant other on making sure that, I'm eating better.
I love the journey you've been on yourself. You're going to have to reverse this.
And it's, man. Ooh. But those belief systems shape our character. And like you said earlier, character is what we do in public. How we show up in public is shaped by our belief systems. A lot of people are the same political party as their parents. A lot of people are the same religion as their parents, eat the same foods, observe the same holidays, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with that, but if you're not aware of it, you could be conditioned to do some things that might be detrimental to yourself or detrimental to others in the community. And one of the biggest tells for me is when I was going through a low point in my life, when I was wrongfully convicted.
Yep.
And I was mandated to a 40-week batterers course around domestic violence. And I felt like I didn't need to be in that class. I was still angry about being wrongfully convicted. I had just spent like 100 days in jail, life sitting you down to make you reflect on things. And I did not want to go to this class. 40 weeks of Wednesdays, I could have been taking a college course instead of doing that. But there was a lesson. There were several lessons, but this lesson stood out to me that our instructor, Tony, walked us through this exercise that I've run through my head when I've spoken in youth classes and youth groups and what have you. And I even challenge a lot of my friends, mostly men, but women as well, because we all perpetrated it at different times. And the model he used was, he asked a group full of men from ages 18 to probably like 65, being the oldest in the room, to describe or name all of the insults that you have for men. Right. And people just started shouting them out. So, we'll give the audience a second to do it. You could do it right here live while we're chatting. Think about all the insults, your worst insults, whether you're a woman and you said it to a man, try to hurt a man's feelings, you know exactly where it goes to. Men challenging men in the street, you know exactly where it goes to. And what we saw when the list of 15 or 20 words went up, I would say out of 20, maybe 18 of them were based in gender.
I can imagine what some of them were. Yeah.
Right. So, there were words like sissy.
Yep.
Bitch.
F word.
F soft, all these traits that either directly or indirectly are historically have been linked to femininity. And
that's a bad thing that our sisters, I know what you're saying.
Right.
I just wanted to name that.
But that was what was implied, that the worst insult that you could apply to a man was to compare him to a woman. Now, if you believe that to be true and practice that, then you have to do the work. Well, you don't have to do shit, but then you have to, but you could think about, well, what do I think about women if I think this is the way to hurt a man's feelings?
Yeah.
If I think this is the way to deepest hurt his emotions is to compare him to a woman, you must not think highly of a woman. It made me stop using terms like, oh, you throw like a girl, or you hit like a girl,
or don't cry like a
girl. Right.
Yep.
And then, when you start to do that work, you're like, well, there's some women out here that would bust my ass. If I got into a fight with them, if I was on a basketball court with them, if I was on a tennis court with them, if I was in any field where they're the expert, if I was in a debate with certain Congress people, would whoop my ass. And the gender doesn't have anything to do with it. So I bring that up because there is a conditioned belief that women are weaker.
Yeah.
And because they are weaker, because we believe they are weaker, we are conditioned to oppress them. Now, anyone you assign weaker to, whether it's a race of people, whether it's immigration status of people, whether it's a sexuality, whether it's a gender, once you put yourself on a pedestal and put them below you, it's easier for you to oppress, treat poorly, discriminate against, all that policy, kill, all that comes out from your belief system. Now, whether that comes from reading the quote unquote good book, whether it comes from the things that your fathers and uncle whispered when they were playing cards or joked about when they were drinking, whether it's what you see in your community as you were speaking to, not only are they struggling because they're aware of what they're going to be challenging if they were to be their authentic selves, but now they have to worry about you oppressing them and hurting them because of how they've seen you act.
If I could go a little bit deeper because my biggest concern right now is for that, before we went to break, that DL down low segment. And I'm going to speak to that based on what you just said. Hurt. They could be hurt. And what I mean by that is, dudes, come out, and I'm going to do it purposely like this. Yo, dog, like, I got to tell y'all something. Like, I fuck with dudes. Really? You mean when here's the thing. You mean when we took a shower together, when you stayed at my house, when you ate at my table, when you took my sister.
Smoke that blunt with you.
Okay. Because there's a whole story about that. So there is a risk for, and what I'm specifically was imitating there, Carlos, this because you been around youth work and in policy. There's a population of some men that, for whatever, and you taught me this, who feel they have no other choice but to shoot. We don't say the S word no more. That feel they have no other choice but to shoot, that are dealing with this.
Mm-hmm.
And that type of
behavior.
Well, and then there's and let me, you might get me for saying this, but I think I told you yesterday that in these spaces, just like I do of you, I find myself through conditioning, whatever, saying, and what I'm about to say is in all that we're talking about, there's no agenda outside of the mental health and health that we're going to get into. There's factual knowledge or incidents that some gang stuff that have went on has been minimal as it is, has been because dudes were like broke up, jealous, and on the low, and all that other stuff. That's the population that I'm concerned about, Carlos, when I said hearing the aunts and uncles in the living room and the struggle and the fact that if their boys and others and families of what you said think that about them, and the comparison, which is just dissing our women, of how you're going to diss a man is 18 of those terms that point to characteristics or whatever of being a woman in that environment, in that population, bro, is dangerous. It is very dangerous, sir.
Right.
And you know that there's the mental health, and you said, you know, the you know, I made light and said, oh, maybe because of, you know, breakups or whatever, but also some mental health of Ninja. You're the one that opened me up to this, and now, you know, we was in DY, and you know what I'm saying. And so there's
So
that
like
mental resentment, which, and then, well, you know, a couple of years ago in DY, this happened, but now we on the out. And how come I always see you around with that? Carlos, it's not far, brother. It's not far-fetched.
And no, and I don't think it's far-fetched at all.
That's the group I'm worried about on a mental health, a public, not a big public safety factor, but a public safety factor, and health.
So let me build this bridge.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want people to think, oh, right there, what they're talking about right now is for young gay men only, right? So what we're talking about is the mental health of Black men, right? So people often, we have a lot more research around, right? We have a lot more research around young Black men from our lived experience. You know, you get to an age where you no longer get necessarily affirmation from your family, or it doesn't carry the same weight as your peers, right? It's just a natural course of life. Everybody knows this, man, woman, child. You know, this is part of growing up. If it's not balanced well, it leaves young, impressionable minds to be susceptible to doing things that they would not normally do for acceptance or that affirmation or from that fear of rejection. No matter what it is. No matter what. Gang activity, carrying a gun, committing murder, maybe drinking, maybe substance abuse. It runs the gamut. And it happens for straight boys. It happens for gay boys. It happens across the board. So if it happens to, and that's why we was intentional about doing the intersectionality of men, Black, community, gay. Because if we know it happens to men, Black, and in our community, if we're most comfortable around that part, right, and we know that kids struggle, you can come from a household like mine, a 2-parent household, working class, doing well. I still was in a bottle of Mad Dog 2020 Banana Red at 15, still sneaking out of the house, still could have got shooting at parties. I wasn't shooting, but you know, around that scene could have gone a different way, you know. So if it happens to the good ones, those that didn't have a household like mine become more susceptible. Now you add sexuality to it, and now you're treated even more unkindly by that same community. As a young man or young woman, what do we think the mental health of that young child who's still forming at 15, 16, 17,
up to 24,
and up to 20? And I tell people, and this is a generation we can't relate to this generation. Right. And I'm hoping that those of us Generation X and boomers get a little bit better, because we did not have a supercomputer in our pocket. We did not have a camera, a video camera, and all of our friends in our pocket. An event like Slades would have never gone viral in 85 or even 95. It would have only been word of mouth, and it would have stayed limited. Young people would not have been exposed to the same things that they see now without that. So certain things have a permanence to them. They have a danger to them, an online threat to them. All these things affect the mental health of our community overall. And that goes back to us being cognizant about when we exclude and oppress certain segments of our community. If we're not doing it because we're protecting ourselves from a threat, which I think we've already eliminated that it's not a threat, then why are we doing it?
I will say, and I'm going to get off and we can go back to that. It is a threat, and only for some, it's a threat around exposure, and we can unpack that later.
Being exposed
because
of the behavior that the rest of the community exhibits.
Then it goes back, you know,
because the only reason why you don't want to be exposed is because they're going to treat you bad.
Be treated,
So if we didn't treat you bad,
it wouldn't be an issue. And I want to touch on the point too. So the mental health piece is huge, and that for me around the Slades thing is, I'm like, what are they dealing with? And it wasn't just me. You were different because you know what to do. I don't think you reached out about how do you talk to a family member. I had about 4 or 5 dudes, 6 or 7 total straight dudes reached out, yo, just checking in, da da da. But 4 or 5 of them, they did the check-in. And I know they were pure. I'm not saying they had a motive. But like after the check-in, you can hear there was room left. So what's up? What? Well, I got a couple of family members that, like, I need to let them know that, like, we know they're good. And a couple, I was like, really? Because in public perception, generally you would think that they would either not treat, because I know them. I know they wouldn't treat nobody bad. I just was surprised by some of the calls I got from straight dudes that like, yo, I'm like, I need to let my family member know that they're good. I'm good. We all know. And then they would get into, so the reason why is because, I don't want them, what are they going through? You know what I'm saying? And so shout out to those dudes that called.
Yeah.
But the mental
I hope
health,
they get to watch this, because this is exactly.
It's and I say the point about no agenda, Carlos, because it's not, trying to turn out and all this other stuff. What it is,
but those are all straight. Those are all projections.
Those are projections, because if you're not turning outable, it is not. You're not going to get turned out.
Right. But it's also we usually project the worst sides of ourselves when it comes to fear. Right. Straight women and straight men victimize others. They turn out. I mean, that's kind of like slang, right? Like if you want to perform well your first time or your first 5 times and have them turned out, coming back for more, right? Even when we were younger as kids, it was like, oh, you wanted to be with a virgin because if you were with a virgin, she was going to fall in love with you. You'd always have her. Except these are the things. These are the myths that we're taught. We're not talking about emotional intelligence before our first time. We're talking about manipulation and control and power before the first time we have sex, whether you're straight or
and that is such a white supremacist, white male conditioning. And in real time, ninjas, y'all don't understand that y'all are perpetuating white supremacy. Well, right, and at the root of it,
well, that's who runs power right now, right? So the same thing that we complain about white power structure doing to us, every marginalized group then passes it on. You might do it to immigrants. You might do it to somebody because of their sexuality. You might do it because of their heritage. You might do it because of their ethnicity, but we do it. And so we check ourselves, going back to the physical health of it. Someone that has practiced that, we have a huge issues in STDs and STIs and heterosexual relationships, especially teens, even in the city of Boston, right? Now imagine if it's that large in the heterosexual community where it should be a norm that you can go get tested for free. You have community clinics and what have you. If your community is not embracing you, if your family's not embracing you, and you are especially a gay male, how do you walk into a clinic and get tested for HIV? How do you do HIV screening?
But Carlos, this is the thing. When you say gay male, there's a presumption there, an assumption there that they're out. When you say gay male. And you said something a few minutes ago, or
even if they're not out, they won't. But I don't think they would even go to, because you have to have that conversation. The doctor's going to ask you, do you have sex? Do you use IV, drugs? And you're going to say no. They're going to ask, do you have sex with same-sex partners? And so you have to be, if you are going to be truthful with your,
and then what are you faced with? And it's only you and them there, but
you might not know, Carlos. You might not know that they're sworn to secrecy. You don't know about HIPAA. So you might not say, I can't say it to them.
Brothers, they can never articulate it, and I don't think that they should be forced to. They should not. They should live in a society that if they want to, it shouldn't matter. But if they want to, they should be safe. But even if they don't want to, that is a balance of what I said about the dudes that just called me. That is from a concern that they see what's going on. They think they're hiding, and it's having they perceive an impact on what you're saying, their mental health. But I got to give room to, there are brothers, and on the other side, their sister Sue, but we can only talk to, I can only talk to my experience as a man. They're never going to come out. They're going to be their authentic selves. They're never going to post. They're never going to put a picture up. They're never going to wear a flag. They're never going to go to a gay club. And that is fine.
And there's a whole, I mean,
and it's not because of
the, I drove past Althea Garrison, very popular in Boston, right? newspapers
I'm
and
falling
media
out for political reasons.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've run against Althea 3 or 4 times. We've had debates, argued.
All Republicans.
I've been slandered. But
Althea was the first.
But they wanted Althea to identify a certain way. That from Althea's generation, that's not the narrative around it.
It's not, and here comes some conditioning.
And should Althea be forced to do anything other than be who Althea has been, which I believe the more mature I've gotten is their authentic self.
They have been. And thank you, because if y'all ain't picked up this straight dude that is well informed and what they and know either he or she, whatever your thoughts are about that, the respect in there has to be noted. And so Carlos, within our own sub-marginalizations and communities, we all have pettinesses and things. Within our community, you are valid, but you saw the snicker or whatever, and there's more around politics. But within our community, and another breakthrough in real time, because I've played with the jokes, oh, they just need to come on and just, because I was getting ready to make an announcement that Althea was the first.
Right.
But if they've never said it,
right,
we don't. It's so they deserve the same thing
right.
that I said about the.
Right. What is it? Does it? In what ways does it matter to me how the only way it matters to me how Althea shows up is when we're at a debate.
In policy.
Policy debate, or we're running against each other, and it's candidate versus candidate, and we at war at that point. I don't care about anything else other than beating you for this seat. So I think there's that part of it. And again, I want to keep bringing it back to examples for straight people to get, because I think sometimes we get a mental block. Like, there are tough guys in our neighborhood, straight tough guys. Let me rephrase that. They appear as tough guys. They carry themselves as tough guys. And if you look them in the eyes and they think that you have pierced their mask, they will attack you. They will get aggressive with you, because how dare you look through the mask? I'm already hiding who I am. I'm not even my authentic self as a straight tough guy out here. And I don't know I don't know them. I don't get a DVD of their life. I don't know what happened to them at 10, 15, 20. But I know not to look him in the eyes for too long, lest he think I'm a threat and be mad that I can see him. Even if I can't see him, even if he thinks I saw him. How many times what are you looking at?
Yep.
That comes from, don't look at me. I'm hiding my pain. I'm hiding my discomfort. Don't look at me. So if that's happening with the majority of straight men in certain neighborhoods, again, I want people to think of it, the intersectionality. That's a Black man in community having that struggle. Imagine the extra layer.
And again, it goes to, there is another real time. There's an element of going through it as that Black man if he decides to come out. There have been some brothers that have come out and they keep it real about, they're still in the game and that they just, not that many in Boston. But the other part of that is them coming out. It has still that presumed level of backfire. They're still going to get that back.
Yeah, we're still gonna do them dirty because we haven't evolved as a community.
And it goes back to your piece about community. So I want to give balance to that. Fear is real, but there is the balance of the Altheas and who I said about the brother that would never ever, and it's not because of the conditioning, that they're just not public. They're discreet. They're just private about everything.
Right.
About everything. So to your point about you're naming some macro prejudices, you're naming that there are some foundational things that contribute generally to our prejudices. In this particular conversation, those prejudices are being highlighted in a multi-tiered manner to highlight the fact that it's a lot. This intersection, and for bro, I'm out, I'm public. I can't even imagine. I'm talk to you, Thaddeus, Newt, a couple of therapy sessions. I journal, self-care, medicate, whatever you want to call it. it goes back to the mental health, and we'll talk about the health in a minute with the numbers and STIs and men who have sex with men. Somebody asked me on a show or something about to describe, was it Simone or I asked somebody or I don't know. All I came up with what I went through. I started out earlier saying that I had a thought in that bathroom one day, looking in the mirror, and I was listening to some show when the young people were coming out. And I had to sit there, Carlos, and make a comparison to you and I having this conversation. What am I, 53? 40, 30, 20, 33, come out 40, 20, 30 years ago. The thought I'd probably be up, you remember this, Solomon Fuller, the clinical psychiatric space that was in BMC. Now you're showing that we're not the same age. That's whatever. But you know, it the mental health, because I was thinking, I was like, wow, this generation has it, you know, kind of good. And then I'm like, no, they don't. Because there's still, in some respects, they do. And we haven't even gotten to the whole, you're right, your thoughts on it. We're talking from mental health and health. We haven't even talked about the young little boy that feels mentally and everything that he's a girl. I'm not asking for your thoughts. We're talking about the mental health at that age and all that. The thing for me, Carlos, is why I'm willing to be transparent and have this convo about my mental. It's better now. I don't know if I blocked it out growing up, outside of just being fearful, literally getting like nervous and hands sweating when people would, you know, is he gay or are you gay? And, you know, and again, I wasn't a big denier because I didn't like to lie, but I wasn't. Yes, I am. I was like, well, you know, I'm in ministry and, you know,
you have to figure out every interaction kind of every single time. But that's a huge stress.
I think you'll appreciate because I was able to pivot. You know, as a politician, you got to be able.
Yeah, but it's stressful doing that. That's what I thought of just now. Like,
it is in reflection, Carlos. I don't know if, in retrospect, in the real time moments of like the question, I heard and real time moments, I remember the stress. I don't know if I've hid or just haven't processed the life course of the stress of that through the years.
I mean, the level of, I don't mean to project this. Like, for me, like a level of having to be performative.
Yeah.
To perform to other people's norms. That was the most stressful part about being a politician for me. Like, I didn't mind. I love the service, love helping, love being able to pick up the phone, get something done. But having to smile when I'm not in a good mood, having to be nice when I don't feel nice, having to be respectful to people that are disrespecting me because of what someone else is going to think of me, or what someone else may think of me,
or what
I think about myself, or what someone else said. And that's just in a limited part of my life that I chose, right?
What about
and people are like, you're going to get back into it? Hell no, right? And I have the luxury of saying hell no. Like, I did it, enjoyed it, done with it, put it down, tell other people you might not want to do it because this is what it comes with. But if I don't have the option to step in and step out, right? It's like when we talk about racism, we can't hide the color of our skin. We can't change our sexuality. Now, I'll keep going back to the out thing because I don't mind if you carry it. I don't care if there's a PDA between a man and a woman in the restaurant, or a man and a man. Like, it's still a PDA. Like, as long as it's appropriate for the venue, and it's appropriate for the venue.
And PDAs are PDAs, and then other things.
Hand in the back pocket is the hand in the back pocket. I really could care less. It's not gonna throw me off. But that, you know, it varies for different people, and I think that, you know, it's so frustrating to me. And I will say something you touched on earlier. I have a family member, a younger family member. I hate this term, but I keep using it. Who was out?
Yep.
And I watched as he went through that process. And it's interesting because I'm into psychology, so sometimes I like to stand back and watch. And Instagram changed, different pictures. clicking like
You
on the
saw
pictures.
the evolution
Yep,
of things.
but I'm clicking like on the picture. I'm saying this to those who called you and said, I have a family member. How do I?
Yep.
I would encourage them to treat them just like I treat you. Like
Mhm.
if it's not an issue, it's not an issue. You can say to them, I know. And if you ever want to talk to me, you could talk to me about
And
it.
that one of them I did say when it comes up, don't.
Right, but it might not be a push. And I have family members who went to my family member and said, "Are you going to tell me?" Like I know, but when you're going to tell me, kind of thing, as if they have to perform and tell each person. And that's why I don't like the out thing. It's like, what is it? An announcement? You got to go around like Paul Revere and tell everybody, "I'm out, I'm out, I'm out." How many times straight people don't make each other do that?
Mute my mic because I want to say something.
I mean, we kind of do it in a weird case when we're young. We're like, "Oh, I slept with this one and this one and this one and this one," and we affirm each other that way. But why am I going to make you do it? Does it even matter?
So, in fairness to some, in the spirit of the dudes that called me, there's a smaller population that they're not aware that them being their authentic in their environment, them being they want them to be their authentic selves because they want them to be free. Right. But they can only control that.
They can't protect them for the rest of the world. Right.
And so to those folks, I'm just thinking about, you got to give some grace to that.
Right. And just treat and just be
and
normal.
Be present. Something like when those, pictures, I think you were one of the ones when the pictures came out or whatever, at some point in one of the relationships, like we had a conversation like, yo, it's cool to see, kind of being public or whatever. And I never had no issue, but
yeah, I was surprised. Like, oh, now you being public. Like, I thought you was always a discreet person.
Yeah. And I was, and then, you get with a youngin' and then, so anyway, it's so much that this, so I guess to your point, Carlos, about this out thing, and we didn't plan to land here. Let people be who they are. Even if you feel that within your environment, you want them to be safe. And I got to be honest with you, we got to own generally a little bit of us wanting them to feel safe is pride. Us wanting them to feel safe.
For our ego. I want to feel like I made my family member safe. Right.
And it's not a bad thing, but for some pride is good.
Yeah. I get that.
But the thing is to create environments where they can talk to you if they want to. They can come to you. If a 15, 16-year-old comes and says, Mom, I think I got an STD. The first thing, if it's a young man, first thing a parent might say is, what girl did you?
Right. Then the parents' shame of not being able to protect their child from
in general.
The whole umbrella rolls out. Right.
And then you got this other thing that, well, Ma, it was a dude, and and then it's like the priority doesn't, in a lot of cases, don't become the health. Guess what? Within 20, 30 minutes, they're told to pack their bag.
Right.
And that is an experience for some.
Yeah. For too many, we come back to the cliche that one is too many, but I would say way too many when the HIV rate amongst black men, homosexual black men is so much higher than white men. To me, has to obviously just health disparities just because of socioeconomics, but the conditioning of community has a lot to do with it.
And not wanting to go get tested, to what you were saying before, because they ask those screening questions.
If I have to sneak around, if I can't go to if I don't feel like comfortable going to the doctors, and I have to hide my life, I'm hiding all of this, then I can't take advantage of all the things that I might be able to take advantage of. I might not go to and learn about HIV screening and being able to be medicated so that, there's all kinds of different PrEP and all that stuff, right? You're just going to turn a blind eye to that. And so family members and community, we're pushing them towards this self-destructive behavior.
And Carlos, what about being on a DL? No. What about being bisexual, active with a woman, but you still every now and then? And that's a whole another combo.
Yep. And to me, that's more of, and I'm projecting from women's perspective, it's usually billed as a secret, right?
Women know.
If you take the secret out of it, I think it's fair game between consenting adults.
But that's a whole nother thing, because on one hand, the women want the brothers to be honest and authentic and real. But you remember the scenario where the guy, there was a show or whatever, and he said once in his college years he had an experience with a male, and she broke the engagement off.
That's why I think it's important, even though we're talking about primarily the intersectionality of a black man.
Yep.
The same thing when I talk about how we condition young boys. It's not just men that say stop crying like a girl. Women say that to boys as well.
They do,
right? Women have an expectation on men as well, and so they play just as critical a role in all this intersectionality.
Yep.
From their point of view, what they embrace as manhood,
and also
what they reward as manhood.
And looking out, because we got to give some of the sisters that does part of that condition is also looking out for them, because if they cry like a girl, they know what they're going to be faced with.
No doubt.
Coming
it
up,
all goes back to a belief system that we
rather.
carry, regardless of.
It goes back to the beliefs and
are you going to be? I believe that you're going to be harmed. Black parents telling their kids about the cops is because they believe they might be harmed. White folks telling their daughters not to mess with black boys
because they believe,
not because they might not like us and want you to be with a black boy, period, but they also don't want you to be publicly outed. Let's say out there, because they know how that white woman would be treated
by her
community, her family. So even when we go back to the point of those that called and those have a family member and they're trying to make it more comfortable, be comfortable having the conversations in earshot. Make sure you're not making the pause jokes. Make sure you are, you can show up and defend somebody that's not your relative and let them see it. And they go, oh, I didn't know.
And they may never come to you, but you talk about mental. I was going back to my point before that, when pictures and stuff were getting posted and there were straight dudes liking the post of me and my dude, I was like, and to me it said, okay, well, one, they knew and they're cool with it. Because come on, some of the dudes, I was like, it's not a lot of effort. But for some of the dudes, I'm like, you had to intentionally take 3 seconds, look at it, move your finger, and then hit.
And let's go a little deeper. And the truth of the matter is, nobody gives straight men more grief about being gay than other straight men. So
wait, but hold on. Say it again. Nobody gives
straight men more grief about homosexuality than other straight men.
Or supporting,
So for instance, I anticipate. Now, my friends might have been mostly matured past this point, but in my younger years, if we were doing an interview like this, I would anticipate jokes as soon as I leave. You was over James's house. What y'all do after the camera?
That's kind of sus, dog.
Yeah, but that's how we have conditioned each other, because we're so fearful of it. We've made ourselves hyper aware and hyper fearful of, oh, I can't eat that hot dog or a banana because you might eat. Nobody obsesses over homosexuality like straight men.
So nobody. Come back. Okay, we're gonna flip this for a second. As a straight man, can I ask you why?
I don't know why. I don't know where it came from. I mean, I do believe it's because we know how we'll be treated. So we talked about, so growing up in the 80s, the only gay man I saw on screen that I think I had an older relative, but I was too young to really understand. I knew he had I guess more feminine traits, but family was still around him, but I just knew he moved differently than some of my other relatives that were the same age. And on TV, all I saw was Lamar from Lambda, Lambda, Lambda and the Nerds. You know what I'm saying? Pink and purple leotards, tight spandex, acting very, I don't want to say overly feminine, but very feminine. What I knew was feminine.
A animated stereotype of a gay,
weak, pushed around, marginalized. So even as a child's mind, I don't want to be treated like that. I don't want to be picked on. It's bad enough I'm already a nerd. I see myself in the nerd. I see how they treat nerds on this movie.
Then he black.
I'm black. I see myself there. And I want to be, look at it. Nah. And so it doesn't then show up again on TV. You don't get Omars until this generation.
So that's the thing I was saying, that there is.
And then do we exclude the James Baldwins? Do we exclude the Bayard Rustins, the Langston Hughes? The Quincy Jones? These men who have carried our culture, who have moved civil rights further than 90% of our population, but by themselves. while dealing with similar intersectionality that you're dealing with.
And because Baynard, the movie about how he got pushed back off the NAACP or whatever's going on because someone found out, or staying the night or something, whatever. I don't remember the whole movie. But the thing is that though you name the ones that either came out or through years, because I think James Baldwin kind of got outed some years later or something, I'm not sure, but they were out or outed. There's people in people's circles, bro, that are dealing with attraction, curiosity about same gender, that I don't know if you guys said the word earlier, that are being to some, and it may be extreme, but from a mental health standpoint, to consider all they got to go through, do I tell why and all this other stuff, there's a level of torment. On a mental health standpoint, I can speak to that from.
That's what I was asking. Like every single interaction
has to
that's
be
hanging over your. I know if it's hanging over, if being black is hanging over my head at every single interaction, and then I feel safe when I get into a room to a degree of safety when I get into a room of black men.
Yep.
But now you still carrying a different level of struggle that I have put down at the door, because you're not sure how the rest of us are going to treat you, simply because of some shit that doesn't even matter, because it's not going to happen in this room. That's crazy to me.
But so for the brothers that have to carry that, and so that's where you get, substance misuse of substance. Yeah. You get some level of violence if they self-hate, and if they are suppressing the same gender but active with the opposite gender, but doing it, but hate themselves in it. Right. Domestic violence.
Right.
Then you got to live up to the par. So then you're going to produce a child.
Right. And you see families where 20 years down the line, a man gets divorced because he had been suppressing it, but now he has children and a wife, and now you have to explain that. And I'm not saying that's part of life.
Right. The double life.
Right.
And now I'm going to say something, Carlos. Some of these ninjas, as unsafe and conditioning as it is, and this is probably a value statement I'm about to make, I'll just say it is so important to be as authentic and honest if you have expressed to another human being that you are in a committed, what's the word, when it's just two people? Monogamous relationship.
Yeah.
I get what we're saying about society, or maybe that's another thing, another episode or whatever. But some of us in our community, out, whatever, same gender loving, both gender loving, whatever, there's some ownership and accountability that if you get to a point of working through the mental health process, I'm not talking about coming out and all that other stuff, but to those that you have committed to, maybe had children, bought a home, because this is just James saying this, that 20 years later is for your children, for the spouse, could be very interesting. And again, we don't know everybody's journey.
Right.
So we got to be sensitive to that. But there was a moment in time where the biggest HIV stats were with black women.
Right.
Guess why that was?
Because they were the hidden. They were sleeping with
hidden.
Men.
And it's something you said earlier, and I want to make a little plug. If you were in a relationship when we were talking about before, or you're living with a woman, committed, but you doing some things on the side. And now this is whether with women, men, or whatever. You're not as easy, or you're not as quick to go into CVS and buy condoms. And so. And also, some of the research, I was taking some workshop, says that for a man that is not open with his sexuality in the heat of the moment, rather than just going with the moment, to stop and have to put on the condom, and the reasoning why they rather not deal with that. My point is,
you don't want that. You're saying that you're blocking that point of consciousness.
It's not even because
I'm
putting a condom on because there's a risk.
Right.
I mean,
that's a lesson that should go out through our whole community.
That's why I said male and female.
But I'm saying also straight as well.
Yes, sir. But it's
You're saying it's
straight
extra level.
men
Yeah.
might be in well, sometimes because of pregnancy more than STI. Let's just keep it 100.
Right.
So
I mean, for
my,
women should demand it because if they're at risk because of their proximity to men that could be lying and being in dangerous behavior, it becomes incumbent upon you to protect yourself until you are in a monogamous relationship that you trust.
And you know and trust. And also,
I was a latex champion. I don't play them games.
Listen.
Mom used to yell out the window before I went on dates until I was like 25. Make sure you wrap it up. I have the date in the car, windows down in July. But there was no shame in it because it was like,
but I can't
well, you know what I'm trying to get
out the window doing it
every time. And I had a father figure, father and older brother.
Yeah, Ricardo,
no conversations about condoms, no conversations about sex. That came from my mother. So I just wanted to throw that in because I don't want. A lot of times we talk about safe sex. Everybody says, "Oh, that's an issue for same sex, same gender loving people." No, that's
across community. The board because I got bro. You've been seeing what I've been posting lately. Thanks to the partnership with ABCD, condoms are available to you at kiosks all 3 areas of Boston. But getting back to a serious point, health is an issue because STIs and HIV are rising, and men who have sex with men, they're not talking gay. They're talking men who have sex with men, and that includes trans women because biologically,
right,
the rates are even higher because of some of the things that we just said about the acknowledgement when you put a condom on and all this other stuff. And so part of the oppression and the things to go back to a lot of your foundational points is that 16, 17, 30-year-old that's hearing you talk in the kitchen is even more oppressed and even more reluctant to go seek health services proactively or either reactively because
they can't even go to their peers the same way. I remember at 15, 16, when we were lying to each other about how we got some yet.
Yep.
You can't even have those conversations because you got to lie. You have to lie. You have to tell 2 lies, right? I got some. And she was fine, you know what I mean? Like,
and it's so and they're you know, I didn't lie, but there was some exaggeration,
right?
You know, of some things to cover,
right?
You know what I'm saying? And so, but what? And I wasn't on social media,
right? That's what I'm saying. That pressure wasn't there.
So
that's what I say about the generation gap.
This is the thing that parents.
You didn't have to worry about falling asleep and someone taking a picture of you. You didn't have to worry about someone else. You know what I mean? It was if you did get outed, it might be to a small group of 10 people in your circle. It wasn't going to be to your entire school.
Text.
Yeah, right.
Or that thing that happened in 20 where the girl found the boy's video and there was that video going around and him having
things like that. Right.
And then see, that's where their violent stuff comes in. And because then dudes are like,
now you hurt me socially. You put me you put me in danger physically. You know, so I don't know where we are in time, but I wanted to go back to kind of one of the first points. And I don't know if you want to dive into the comments as well, but I always think about how human society either does better than nature or worse than nature. And on the way, as I was walking over here, I was thinking, you know, zebras and gazelles and several herd animals gather in the same fields. Although they are different, they're eating the same food, gathering in the same fields. They know that they're different, but they pose no threat to each other. Therefore, they do not discriminate. They do not attack. They do not, you know what I mean?
Yep,
they're able to coexist.
And
the zebra looks right over at the buffalo or the bison and goes, yeah, you over there, my group's over here, and there's no problem.
Yep.
When a threat shows up, a predator shows up, those same groups alert the other members, whether it's same species or not, hey, it's time to get moving. The predators are here.
Yep.
And we always claim our belief system tells us that we're greater than all the beasts. We have dominion. However, we don't even follow that example.
When it comes
and that's what I meant when I started off saying, I don't understand how your sexuality is not a threat to me at any point in my life or any time of the day.
So why is it?
Therefore, I never have to be prejudiced against you because of that reason. Now, if you keep me out of an event where I need to meet voters, Yeah, I want to put your car on flat. But if you're not affecting my life in any way, I'd rather build community with you, make it safe for you, make you a stronger member of the herd, rather than try to feel like I'm the alpha, whatever name title you want to put on it, and oppress you. That's not going to make, it might make my ego feel good for a minute, but it weakens my community.
Fear of oppression, and that might not be the right word in this analogy. Fear of presumed, and everything that we talked about, you'll appreciate this. The fear of how you might be oppressed, being associated with, out supportive of this particular oppressed population. You ask why, and I think I'm kind of realizing it. There's multiple reasons why they're doing it, but it comes from their fear in those multiple reasons. And we got to own some stuff, Carlos, and I might get in trouble with my community for this, but some of the stuff that came out of this election, everything that you're saying is valid, but I got to give our Black men some level of sight or being seen.
Okay.
Trans community, LGBTQ community, women and whatnot are in a supportive, are being supported in ways in society that Black men tend not to be, and Black women to some respect.
I'll agree with that.
But because Kamala was a Black woman and and our Black women do stuff. Mm-hmm. I just got to name, for those that don't respond in oppression to that oppressed group, I see and hear you, because it everything that we named up until the gay,
yep,
Black men are dealing with.
Right. And I'm with you.
But how would you deal in that? Are you still going to perpetuate that onto another? Because and I don't think it's, I honestly think it's Carlos,
emotional
it's
maturity.
Ignorance. It's just, for some it's ignorance, for some
because
it's
that justifies, and I get it. Understanding.
If I say it's ignorance, then that justifies
not the ignorance. Yeah, kind of. So the people that voted for the president-elect, had been unspoken to for quite, they feel like they were unspoken to for quite some time. It's woke this, it's woke that. It's DEI this, it's DEI that. It's affirmative action this, it's affirmative action that. The misinformation of poor white people.
And guess who was the number one population after them?
Working class white people. They have been conditioned to believe that their oppression that they think is oppression,
and their
belief system is formed that it's based on immigrants that don't look like them, not their ancestors that immigrated, but brown immigrants.
That part.
That Black people who can't govern themselves. So when you're conditioned with that, and then you speak to it, it gets you amped up. It's like cheering for your hometown basketball team. Oh, that's I can relate to that. That's mine. I feel a sense of pride in that, and I understand it emotionally, but again, I don't think it's helpful.
It's not.
Right? They're voting against their own self-interest in many cases. And so what I'm saying is, if you understand them to be doing that when they elect this guy, then you should be able to understand that you're doing it too when you treat this boy in your neighborhood different because you think he's feminine and you see that as weak and you're scared that he's good. The same way they're scared that they're going to become the minority, which is ridiculous. Well, let's say it's not ridiculous, but you're projecting that we're going to do to you what you did to us when you were in control. And are straight people starting to say, I want to protect you from being mistreated by mistreating you now. I got to be tough on you now. I got to throw you out of the house now. Like, it's a backwards thinking.
It is, and it's some of it very minimal ignorance. Some of it is deflection. And some of it is, to your point that you've been saying through this, is people's belief systems, for whatever conditioning, just don't We talk about DEI. Some of it is just because people, very basic and elementary, because they're different. They really ain't, some homophobe or whatever. It's the ignorance, it's the deflection. And you know what, Carlos, in real time, I'm going to sit up here and we can try to reason together and get people on a thought process.
That's all you
to
can
start
do
the reasoning,
beliefs.
but it is not our responsibility.
No.
No. I know you never implied that, but this for me, because I sat here, naturally just I'm trying to answer your question, and the thought hit me like, James, you can answer Carlos's question to the best of your ability, but at the root of it, all we can do is create this dialogue to at least give people a different lens and thought process to examine themselves in ways that which they either mimic and or further perpetuate the very thing that they deal with in those other categories that you name for me outside of being gay.
Right.
Like,
and prioritize that shit. Like, you're going to put someone's sexuality over the policies that we need to be, that have been oppressing us for 200 years. Like, let's focus our energy where
that's why I want to say they're ignorant, because I'm like, in hearing that articulated, the only thing I can really think of, either you're really that ignorant or like, really, bro? Like, is it that? And that's where deflection comes in, because if you will
and hypocrisy, like, oh, so I'm okay. I'm okay with, and I try. And so the belief system part, I used to love to challenge people's belief systems. I want to make you debate it. I want to make you stand on business. Let's see if you can hold the debate. But then I realized it really just builds resentment if you start to tear down someone's belief system that doesn't do it for themselves. We can only challenge our own belief systems, analyze where we got it from, and then decide what we want to keep and what we want to unlearn and get rid of. So I agree with you 100%. That's what this dialogue hopefully will do for people, allow them to analyze their own belief systems, right? But we can see the hypocrisy, the duality in people in real time. You can, if you're going to go to church
now in talking with you, then
here's one for you. I go to church and the book is saying one thing, but there's a long-standing joke amongst comedians and within the church that the music minister can be
everybody,
gay, right?
But that's okay.
And the music is rocking and everybody's in the spirit, and it's okay that he's the minister of music, but you can't move him into
pastor.
So the hypocrisy and the duality is right there. We can use the slang. We can use this even as women and men. We can use the slang in pop culture and let them define what's cool, whether it's voguing, whether it's clothing styles, whether, you see more men wearing handbags and body purses and body bag, all kinds of things that we want to borrow at our convenience when it's convenient to us. But then we still want to be standoffish with the rest. And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying right or wrong, but we all can see the hypocrisy and the duality of those acts.
I'll end with this. You can say where we can go and whatever, if you had anything else to ask or say, but when you said the hypocrisy and the duality, the funny thing is some of the DL thug dudes, they tend to, you was just saying something about the, feminine, whatever. They tend to, the hypocrisy and duality. They are on the DL and they get down, but then the hypocrisy is they'll call out and ostracize the feminine appearing type boy, but on the low, that's who they calling. So these aren't, intersections, of course, aren't going to be one and done. Simone is if you want to go to the comments.
Yeah,
we got everything. I got
time.
You the host.
I got time. Okay. The job of fam is still tuned in.
They
I think this is a conversation for people to be able to reflect on and come back to, and people's comments I think is important.
I think
we're having a community dialogue here.
Simone Nicole, who did the first convos, and she said oppression excluding you might make my ego feel good for a minute, but it weakens my community. Miss Teresa has been saying a few things on here. The environment you create and foster from the beginning will dictate the level or lack of communication you receive going forward. Some of these are relevant to the point we were saying, but
that's a whole community's wise word to the community right there. The environment that we create, and that was a driving force for me wanting to have this conversation with you. These conversations are usually held between just straight people, just gay people. It's I have conversations I want to host like this between the Black and Latino community.
I want to be black and white.
Latino. You know what I mean? So there's so many bridges that we need to build because the environment we create, we cannot rise higher than that environment.
To her point, and that's the thing. I don't know, Carlos, if this is happening now with us. And it's, Slades was a microcosm here in Boston. And I'm just thinking about this in real time. There's some stuff getting ready to really come down the pike for Black people. And we cannot allow what happens in closed doors between two consenting. Now, let's be clear. Two consenting adults, a respect for one another, health and safety, all that other stuff. There's something getting ready to come down the pike that all that stuff is going to have to go out the window.
Let's draw two consenting adults. I have to respect the fact that you might not be safe and healthy. What's important to me is consenting adults. Consenting adults have the right to be unhealthy. And that's what we're talking about. Right. Because if we act like it's not happening, it happens every day. Yeah. Straight and same gender loving people are unhealthy every day. There's domestic violence. We get caught in the narrative of everything has to be perfect. I had the same struggle when I finished that batterer's course. I reached out to domestic violence agencies. I reached out to a couple of friends and they had me speak at youth groups, which is I really enjoy doing because, I get into the whole throw like a girl, hit like a girl, and you can dispel that while boys are still forming those thoughts. And when I started talking to some of the domestic violence agencies, especially in Boston, that I wanted to speak to and become an advocate, because I felt like I learned even more about it through this work, even harboring the feeling about, my innocence, is that there aren't any men. Men speak about it, but very rarely. Usually, White Ribbon Day, something happens as an event, but we're not speaking about it regularly.
It's becoming a different conditioning or changing the paradigm. All these sexy, trendy
right,
words,
and people want to gatekeep the narratives in terms of who should be, like you said, how someone should show up. So for me, it was like, if you're not going to admit to being guilty, then we can't have you speak about.
But I'm not
domestic
guilty.
Violence. But I'm not guilty, and I do want to speak about. I was speaking about it before I went through this.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that conversation with the mayor at the time, Mayor Marty Walsh, and his staff, like before I even came on and before they, put me back in the newspaper. It was like, hey, let's go meet with these groups. Let's go sit down with them. Like, we need more men talking about these issues in our community.
You talked about the 40 weeks, Carlos, but Ninja, do you think that was a contribution to your further evolution?
Yes.
Going through that course?
So the idea of
the course,
seeing
not
the course, the whole thing. Obviously, even out of the bad, you pull the good from it. But that course, seeing how men view femininity, was like an epiphany, like light bulb went off.
Yeah,
and you see that level of conditioning. And then at one point, I was expecting to be a father to a daughter, and those two things really made me look at how I had been conditioned to see women, how I treated, because I was going to be responsible for a girl, a woman, and I know how the world, especially men, treat girls. So then I understood all the fears come rushing in. Like, do I put her in martial arts? Do I get her gun training at 6 years old? Like, you know what I mean? Like I was, I had our whole life planned out
around defense
from the world, protecting her from the world. So those two things were pivotal in me understanding, getting rid of some of what was trendily talked about as toxic masculinity. I hate the labels on it, but it was just toxic. It wasn't masculinity. It was just toxic.
Starting up, but we got some ones who aren't masculine who be toxic sometimes.
Toxic is just toxic behavior. It don't got to be attached to all this, assigning it to a gender. Like, men have masculine energy and we have feminine energy. Women have masculine energy and feminine energy.
Why do we say feminine energy? Is that usually attributed to the soft side and our self-grooming and looking good?
I think people assign it differently based on what they believe. But I think I do think we're born with certain levels of testosterone and estrogen, certain levels of hormones.
Okay. I see where you're going. Yep.
And I think those things lend us to certain behaviors to some degree. I don't think they're set in stone. But the reason why I use the two is I think that they both have to be embraced in each person in their totality. And for women, sometimes someone might feel like a woman's being too masculine, and some people might feel like a man's being too feminine.
Yep.
But most people that are well liked usually have a good balance of good friends are, your good male friends are usually have some nurturing side to them as well. They have a softer side to them. They're understanding. They're a good listener.
Yep.
They're a good communicator, things that we attribute to the other gender, right? But there are some women who in our community, shout out to them, have been fiercely protective of us. When there were no safe men present, would stand between you and harm's way, whether it was another man, whether a woman, a system of police, whoever.
Yep.
So there's a healthy side to it and there's a toxic side to it. But once we start to understand it in its totality, then we're not uninformed and ignorant. And that's going back to what we started with. The ignorance is bliss. And the unlearning of this ignorance can be painful, but it creates peace and it creates a better environment for our community to be better than it ever has been if we do it right.
It goes back to Miss Teresa and Simone's point. Miss Teresa said that the one that resonated with you most, the environment you create and foster from the beginning will dictate the level of lack of communication you receive going forward. And then to Simone's point, oppressing, excluding you might make my ego feel good for a minute, but it weakens my community. So fostering that communication even more so is like while we're here, why we're here. A lot of the comments around, thank you for both of this. The good sister, she doesn't jump in often. Angela Marie, she jumped in and said a good duo. James makes some sounds when he stands up. Anyway, like that.
I'm glad they caught that.
Ramilda says she had been here. I had just looked down and seen her pop in. We went from 18 to 58 in a matter of 5 seconds. So y'all that just popped on,
man, you gotta scroll up.
There's an after watch. We're gonna leave this up.
Is Simone pulling up on us
today? I don't think so.
All right, just checking.
A Rich Futrell is in here. We exclude people we don't need. Rich Futrell is in here.
I've been he's the Latin Academy alum. He practices a different brand of politics as me. This is how I know I'm more mature, because I wanted to block Rich about 11 times in the last 4 years. But I don't want to operate in a community where it's a echo chamber. Now, as much as I might disagree with him sometimes, and the first lunch dude that would come out with the mean jokes wants to come out, he's part of the community. I'm not going to disrespect. He knows we've had debates, but I'm not going to disrespect him. I might be a little sarcastic and witty, but I gotta treat that man with respect. I appreciate him being here and tuned in. I hope he shares it and likes the video so more people can watch.
What up, Rich?
Don't be recruiting in here, Rich. Don't be recruiting in here, Rich.
Anyway, what's up, Rich? Simone says something. Now you're gonna have to. This is some Latin teacher thing. She said that was Carlos's point. I'm just quotient it because it was so salient.
She's educated, so she's using those $5 words. We had to give her shit. She was saying she's just quoting it because it was so salient, like a clear point, very clear point.
Like saline, it makes it clear.
Yeah, there you go.
Break
See
it
that?
down.
You breaking it down. Look at you looking at the etymology of words and what they used to say, all those bad things about Madison Park High School.
Watch it, because Miss Teresa just said, "Go ahead, Professor Henriquez."
I used to tell people all the time that the top student at Madison Park High School would have ate me alive academically. I mean, we're probably just as smart, but I didn't have any kind of student practices to keep a 4.0.
I'm trying to think who was valedictorian of my class.
Me a lot.
I didn't know who they were.
And I just threw that out there because we do this discrimination at so many different levels. The talented, we do it about what high school we went to. I mean, obviously we play along with it sometimes, but it's like, especially when you went to an exam school, we were taught to feel a way about the other exam schools.
Mm-hmm.
We were taught to feel a way about Burke and Madison, right? Yep. You know what I mean? Oh, look at them over there. But you grow up and you realize these are some of your best friends for life. You know what I mean? Shout out to those I still talk to from all those walks of life. So I think this has been a great conversation. I'm looking forward.
45 people just did Twitter.
Y'all
gonna have to, because shout out to the Real Boston Media. They probably just woke up and
so at least let's just tell them, we just spent the last 2 hours.
Yeah. You do this.
James Hills let me come in and be guest host today. This is the last live show of the season. He's going to take a much deserved mental health break. Shout out to the Davis system for encouraging that kind of good behavior. Again, sometimes it's important to have faculty around you that'll push you to do good things when you don't know when to sit down yourself.
But that was Newt and Sean and The Real Boston Media.
Great faculty. So we spent the last 2 hours really talking about James's intersectionality, but it branched out into how our community could be doing better, as the experience of being black, being a man, being a black man, doing that in community, and then being a gay man doing that in the black community, and how all those things intersect, and how often, if I recall some of it, stressful, dangerous,
tormenting,
subject to disrespect, fearful. I mean, there were so many things that could be attributed to it, that I think we were talking about how we could all relate to it depending on where you intersect with a black man in community. And if you happen to love the same gender or not, you're still going to see the intersectionality. You're still going to play a role in it. And we were just discussing on ways we might be able to play a better role to strengthen our community for everybody. If not for yourself, for the generation after you, you might have loved ones, cousins, nephews, sons, daughters who are silently struggling with this. And this might help them to watch the video by themselves. It might help you become a better family member or friend, if you're close to it as well, or just a better person in general is our hope. But that's a personal choice on what you do with this information.
It a lot of the beginning of what we talked about, we could have just ended before we got in to the gay thing. And the reason why I say that is because I think, to your point of why and whatnot, that part of a lot of people's, that part of my life is not so paramount in comparison to those other parts. Community for me right now, if I was doing an order, God's always first. Yeah, I'm a black man, but I'm secondary to community. And I understand that with taking care of myself before I get in trouble for that. But again, that part of my life is so minimal outside in the fact, and I'm surprised we didn't go here. I'm glad we didn't. But outside of being booed up or whatever, moving back to Brooklyn, it's I've been waiting for Nicole to be like, oh, here go Brooklyn. We just.
But if it's that minimal for you, right, at this point, then that's my point. It should be that minimal or more minimal for everybody else who it does not affect in the personal ways that it's affected you.
I agree. And not just, and that's even more so for, again, Carlos did his closing piece around why, but a big closing. I just had a long deja vu, like a long
the glitch in the matrix.
First of all, that must be you.
Yeah.
So we're going to hurry up and get ready to end. For me, my being more public about my journey is really about the people that can't right now, and that couldn't, and that don't want to, and don't have to. I want to figure out a way for them to be safe to call. How do they get health screenings? How can they call an anonymous line and just talk to another dude or whatever about the fact that, no, I can't. I just broke up with my dude. Like, I'm making light.
Right.
But Carlos.
Right. We've had those conversations before.
That could, yeah. Oh, God.
We've had the conversation before. A relationship's a relationship. We can relate on what it's like to break up with somebody.
And it ain't really no different. That's I guess the thing is, there really isn't. And I keep, my bedroom's right there. I keep making this thing of, there's not really
that's where a straight person right there throws it a joke in. I saw when James pointed to his bedroom with you right there. See, that's my conditioning.
Yeah.
As soon as he says, my brain's like,
as much as I'm saying protective, I didn't even think about this.
I'm just showing you this conditioning of a straight man. That's how hyper.
Did you see when he said, when that camera went off?
I saw James pointed to his bedroom right when y'all wrapping up. This is what we do to each other. This is what we do to each other.
That and here comes the protection thing again. Like,
don't feel obligated to do it, bro. It's not for you. It's not your role.
I know, but I just went because you're my brother, and away role. From like, anyway, it's such. While it is, hey Mika, while it is important for people to be able to, if they want to be their authentic selves with their sexuality, with their religion, with their fashion expression or whatever, let people live. All of us are not perfect. All of us have our own prejudices and biases that we're we are working on ours. We can't speak for everybody.
Right.
But all in all, Carlos made a point about, if someone watches this, I'm not going to say, send it, forward it. Don't tag on social media.
Just post it on your own.
Just post it. Thank you.
That's the message
Just
in itself.
Post it and share it. And one person, because my thing is like the health equity piece or whatever. If one young person sees this and they call, let me just name this. If you are dealing with anything, but especially this time of year, you might want to come out to your family. You're struggling. This happens this time of year a lot, and you're going through, or you did come out and things are going through. You can call 988 and talk to someone that is not going to judge you. Rates are high with young people in suicide from the LGBTQ community. And so always got to have a resource that you can call pick up your phone and dial 988. They don't know who you are, and you can talk to them about anything. The mental health and the health part is for me. So share this so that 30-year-old, that 40-year-old, that 18-year-old can know that there are spaces that they can talk. I'm going to also say that parents, some of your young people that are 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, this may not be when I say this, where they are in an exploratory stage, and just with health and safety, be supportive of them. Because how you respond can change the trajectory of their life.
Absolutely.
Forever.
Absolutely.
Good, bad, and in the worst case scenarios, ugly. And that for me, the old heads too, but it's these young people's mental health and black men, young people, black, white, Asian, period.
Right. The message can go to everybody.
Adults, it's the black men that don't have an opportunity in a safe space to talk through whatever and to be treated as suffering, silence, and torment.
Right.
And then also are at higher risk for health issues, which the mental health does contribute to. So anyway, we're going to do, this is a little longer than Simone's. On a really light note, I am very vocal about my breakup with Miss Teresa with her knees. She's trying to make light notes. Evelyn Brito's in the building and says she appreciates you. Great conversation. My mother says that you are a natural born broadcaster. And I mean, she typed out the whole sentence. My mother just usually she does sentences. Look at these handsome men. I'm trying to find stuff about you. Dina, Marie Marshall's daughter, Dina. Excuse my French, but F who don't accept you because of your sexuality. They are missing out on having such an amazing person as okay, we can skip that one.
You make sure you go back to read your affirmations afterwards. Don't skip your affirmations as just,
Well, let me share this one with you about you. Carlos, your father was the man. He stood up for the underdog. We all respected him. We wanted to be like him, Chip Greenidge. And I saw something. Evelyn said something about your dad as well. Not Jimmy's burden to bear. Ooh. Yes, Simone. Okay. Y'all are that debrief is good.
Right. Yeah. So I'll give you an affirmation.
Yes, sir.
Before we close. I've talked to you. We've had dozens, if not hundreds of conversations over the years. We've seen each other on this journey over the last, let's say, 15 years. It's neither one of us planned to be right here, right now, right? So it's just kind of where life has taken us. I am happy and proud that what I see from you is a level of comfort, a level of self-exploration, a level of service, and I don't even know if I have all the words to describe it, but I think, and this is for the faithful, a faithful statement. I don't make these up. I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I think you're of where you do the most service without harming yourself. You know what I mean? And I say that because of what we talked about earlier. A lot of times you can be of service to some and neglect yourself or harm yourself or carry more weight, take on other people's burdens. I think you're starting to come into a balance of both. self and community that is good to see, because I think it makes you healthier, more well-rounded, more open-minded, the attributes that I look for in a friend. So I'm happy that you're here. I hope you continue this journey. I think this platform that you've built reaches far more people than you reached before you got to this point, and all that is just kind of a building, and I expect you to continue to build, not only in this platform but as you traverse life.
I appreciate it. And I'm not going to have anything affirmation, not that you was looking for one back, but Carlos, you like set the model for like watching you go through evolution, and we talk and I hear different things, and even sometimes you've been quiet and ask things and whatnot about, you know, this particular lifestyle, whatever. It ditto. And seeing, y'all don't know, like seeing and hearing some of this man's freedom away from Boston type stuff and whatnot is seeing it. I just,
A lot of therapy
I love it.
sessions,
A
yeah.
lot of therapy
A lot of
sessions, but
therapy
you
sessions.
had to be open to it.
Yeah.
And you the one that taught me about the tools in the toolbox. Carlos has taught me a lot, y'all. But that, and it means a lot to hear you say that that's what you, and I know I'm your friend and your brother, but to hear it articulated, you know, it's definitely dope. But these, you know, at the root of what you do and what we do, it is to better. It is to use that way. And we only use it once today, but it is equity for people to be equitably treated and to have an equitable sense of wellness holistically, their mental health. And holistic is encompassing of everything. So again, that was the whole purpose of today. Carlos's in was to maybe help the straight community understand just different behaviors that we experience before you even talk about being gay, specifically Black men. And mine was to sit here and answer the questions and also give some insight into what the intersections look like and what the impact of what Carlos is saying we shouldn't do does really have on someone. So that's it for me. No more comments. We're going to wrap up. We started at 1.
Yeah.
This is the longest Java ever. 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Wow.
And it's 46 people in Twitter.
It's like Club Shay Shay.
They never comment
in pieces
on Twitter.
That's because you rarely respond to the Twitter comments, so people just assume you don't check them. Because I watched it on Twitter too sometimes when I can't get it on another stream.
All right, y'all. We're going to get off of here. Thank all of you all for tuning in. Carlos, I appreciate you, man, because there's only certain people that I am willing to do this convo. So maybe it's just now me, you, and Simone do like a debrief and catch up.
It's a pleasure, man.
We're going to do Black Love in February.
I'm with it. I'm with whatever. I'm excelling in Black Love right now. So
say it again without smiling.
I can't say it without smiling. I'm excelling in Black Love. I'm starting to understand it.
How's it, Carlos? How did it just flip the script for a minute? How's it feel?
Just when I thought we were gonna wrap up, you keep pulling me back 45
in. People on you guys are baffling. Because I'm getting ready to end. Because being 53, sitting here on all that coffee, we're gonna be out of here. We'll see you. So January 6th, Jesus God, 10 a.m.
Don't fear it. We'll be all right.
Thank you. Because that
right.
Seriously, there's a population that is every day they hear, and a whole week. They understood it when I had surgery, but
we can be vigilant without being fearful.
Darren said that you can feel bad, but not guilty. So with that being said, we're out of here, and everybody have a wonderful new year, and we'll see y'all on January 6th. January 6th is the next show.
Nice.
No. I'll probably pop on here and there. All right, y'all, I'm out.